An STP extended life oil filter for just $31.99. And you can get it all fast, your way. Just order online with our free same-day store pickup or next-day delivery.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Start your job today at AutoZone.com. Restrictions apply.
5G is here, but the big carriers want you to sign a pricey long-term contract to get in on the action. Well, no more, because Straight Talk Wireless has rolled out 5G coverage nationwide, with plans starting at just $35 a month with no contract. And get a Samsung Galaxy A32 5G for only $299, all on America's best networks. 5G coverage, 5G phones, less money. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. 5G capable device required, actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary.
Staples Connect is a new world of possible with innovative tools for small business and remote workers and learners. Explore more at your local Staples store or staplesconnect.com.
The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Presented by Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Everybody, welcome in. Justin Kinner with you here on a Wednesday. The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Mine is Kev Nash today here on a Wednesday on Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM. Of course, we want to start off every show thanking our sponsors, Orion Sports Medicine, Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. In fact, we're going to be live at Tim's Bar and Grill on Brown Street for the Talking Out Loud Dayton Flyers pregame show coming up this Sunday. I'll have more details with that. Sully going to be in town. Of course, you can catch Sully every Thursday night from 6 to 7 for Talking Out Loud, an entire hour dedicated each week to Dayton Flyers basketball talk. So I'll have more information for that coming up around the corner. And another shout out to our other sponsor, Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Again, we appreciate all of our sponsors and we would love to add more. So there's always many ways you can go about doing that. A lot to dive into here today. Usually on Tuesday, we do have ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz, who calls into the show, but he had an off day yesterday and he had some other fun activities that he was taking part in. So he said he would love to come on today. So we'll chat with him coming up at 4:30. We will dive into the fallout, of course, from the college football playoff Final Four that was announced. And as I talked about with Kev, you know, we spend months talking about all about these different scenarios, and it really starts heating up about 10 days before the reveal. And I say 10 days because it's usually that final build up to the regular season finale, setting the stage for what could be the conference championship matchups, and then going on and building off of those scenarios. But every year, the committee gets bailed out. Never fails. It never freaking fails. They get bailed out because everything was made easy this year. You know, I truly thought that if the Bearcats made the college football playoff, that they would force them in, that it would be a pity party for the Bearcats. Like, we got to put them in. I mean, they're so cute and cuddly. They went undefeated and they won their little conference. And that's not what happened. They legitimately earned that number 4 spot. Because there's not another team that deserved that 4th spot. Would I have loved Ohio State to get there? Yes. Notre Dame, you can't put them there. They didn't have a conference championship game, and their only loss came against Cincinnati, who, of course, finished everything out undefeated. So you can't put anyone else there. I mean, I thought maybe there would be an opportunity to toy with the idea of putting Oklahoma State there. But really, at the end of the day, that didn't matter either because they lost to Baylor. There was really no real team to put there at number 4, which is why. And again, it's a repeated segment, and I'm not really spending a lot of time on this. I'm just making my point to open up the show, and I'm moving on to what I really want to open up with today. But can we stop wanting to expand the playoff? If the purpose of the playoff is to crown a national champion, national champions are being crowned. The right national champions are being crowned. Nobody is being robbed of a playoff spot. I love when people say that, oh, man, we're getting robbed. We're getting robbed. No one's getting robbed. They have nailed the top 4 every year. Every year. And honestly, I wish it would just be a 3-team playoff. The number 1 team gets to bye, play the winner of between, have a matchup between 2 and 3, and the winner go on to face number 1. We can't even find 4 quality teams, and that's not a shot at Cincinnati. Okay, that's not. I say whether it was Notre Dame at 4, whether it was at Oregon State or Oklahoma State at 4. I'd look at Ohio State at 4 and say, no, they're a legitimate team. But I mean, they have deficiencies. I mean, Ohio State is not a championship team. Like they have too many deficiencies for me to guarantee or to list a guarantee that they could take it to Alabama or anybody else. Bottom line, we can't even find 4 quality teams to make up a college football playoff, and you want to do 6 and 8 and 12. Now, people want to expand it because, it's fair. Well, if you want to do that's fair, first of all, I've said this a million times, you can't come up with a fair scenario outcome in a system that's built to not be fair to begin with. So forget that. Because you guys keep forgetting the purpose of a playoff. The purpose of the playoff is to have the best teams competing to win a national championship. But we can't even find 4 best teams to make up a playoff. That's not a shot at Cincinnati. I would be saying that if Oklahoma State won the Pac-12 and edged out, the Big 12, if they would have won the Big 12 championship and edged out Cincinnati to get that 4th spot, I would still be saying that. So it is what it is, but we want to keep moving the goalposts. We want to keep changing the rules as we go about, it's fair. It's fair. Well, that's not the purpose of the playoff isn't, I don't want to say it's not, the purpose isn't to be fair, but at the end of the day, the number one priority of the college football playoff is to crown a champion and to make sure that the best teams are in there. The best teams are in there every year. To be honest, there's usually only 2 to 3 quality teams, with that 4th team being an outlier because you have to have even teams to make it. That's really all I view it as. So it is what it is, but that's what we ended up with. If you're just tuning in, I'm Justin Kinner hanging out with you here on a Wednesday, 518-1410. That is the call-in number. We will only be taking calls during commercial breaks because, I'm solo today, so I will not be answering the phones while I'm on the mic. I have to do that whenever we're taking a little bit of a breather, right? So 518-1410, save it in your phone, and you can give us a call here momentarily. I want to switch gears here to Major League Baseball, a conversation about Major League Baseball. Alex Wood, former Dodgers pitcher, former Cincinnati Reds pitcher. That's the one piece that I remember that they got in that deal whenever Yasiel Puig came over. Ended up getting Kyle Farmer. The piece I was most excited about was the left-hander in Alex Wood. I was like, that's really what I loved. I mean, think about that year that he was here. That should have been a year that, they ended, you had Sonny Gray. Of course, you had Luis Castillo. They ended up trading for Trevor Bauer at the deadline. And then you would have had Alex Wood, Castillo, and you would have had, Gray and all those guys. That would have been a hell of a rotation. It ended up being a hell of a rotation because Wade Miley ended up being one hell of a lefty this season. Would have been really good last year if he wasn't injured. But the point is, I was a big Alex Wood fan. I was really bummed that it didn't work out. But Alex Wood had an interesting tweet regarding Barry Bonds because, yes, as we approach the Hall of Fame, this is the Hall of Fame time of year where we start talking about, baseball's Hall of Fame. And, I've always said that, to be honest, I think it's 10 times more difficult to get into baseball's Hall of Fame than it is to get to heaven. I mean, at least to get to heaven, you can say a couple Hail Marys, apologize to the big guy, and get there. I don't know what you have to do to get into baseball's Hall of Fame because I think baseball is beyond hypocritical. It's beyond hypocritical. It's embarrassing how hypocritical baseball is. I mean, to sit there and have a moral standard for who you let in your playoff is absolutely, or in your Hall of Fame, it's absolutely ridiculous, especially when you think about how your sport is perceived. Who the hell is baseball to sit here in the Hall of Fame voters to sit here and say, well, I don't like cheaters. Well, the whole sport is nothing but one big cheat. I mean, honestly, college athletics looks at Major League Baseball and says, guys, you guys are dirty. And that's college athletics. That's the dirtiest version of sports out there. That's the most corrupt, dirty, disgusting, gross form of sports out there is college athletics. We love it, but it's the dirtiest. College athletics is disgusting. Okay. In regards to the cheating that goes on, I mean, you don't even understand what goes on. I don't even understand everything that goes on. People that think they understand they still don't even have an idea of just how deep and corrupt college athletics can be. To middle range conferences, or to middle range teams, to all the way to the big boys. You name it. If you think your team's clean, that's what they want you to believe, and they're doing their job then, because that's what it is. But that's my point. College athletics, they sit back, point the finger at baseball, and say, "You guys are dirty." The only time, and I did a topic similar to this a couple weeks ago, but the only time that baseball is talked about is when there's a scandal. No one talks about that great World Series. The only reason the World Series was relevant this year was because you had the Astros in there and people wanted to watch them fail. People didn't tune in to watch the Atlanta Braves. Braves fans did. But the Braves weren't the draw. The Astros were the draw. The Astros are the best and worst thing about Major League Baseball. I love the Astros. I love Dusty Baker. I thought that people really overreacted to the sign stealing thing. I mean, just being so outraged over a team doing what every other team does. That's why I don't really get too caught up in college athletics with any recruiting scandals out there, because I'm like, okay, and the only difference between your program that's in the news cycle for recruiting violations is that your program got caught and ours didn't. That's the only thing. Like, I don't get caught up in that. I don't judge coaches who get caught up in that. I don't judge programs. I don't care. I really don't. Actually, if my team's losing because they're not cheating, then shame on them, because that's the only way you're going to survive in this world. Like, to sit there and act like you want to live by that moral compass of, oh, we're going to do things the right way. We're going to recruit clean. We're going to do this, and you will lose. Bottom line. That's just the reality of it. It's just the reality of it. If you're on a highway and you're following the speed limit, but everybody else, there's a part of 75 coming right into the city where it drops down to 55. And it pisses me off because every time I'm the one that freaks out. I got pulled over one time because it drops down to 55, but everyone is flying, going 75, 80. One car, I swear, had to be going 90 because that's how far in front of me he got within a snap of a finger. So I went from 55. I'm like, well, I'm going to keep up with traffic. It drops down to 55. It's literally right around the bend coming into Dayton. You see this, the city line. And so I start to speed up to keep up with everybody else. And guess what? To keep up with everybody else, now we're all breaking the law, right? We're all ignoring the speed limit, but we're all as one. We're all moving as one. Until I got to this stupid car that was going the speed limit, and I got ticked, and I have road rage. I'm screaming, I'm hollering, I'm laying on the horn, I'm whipping around, and cars I could see in my rear view. Cars are doing the same thing, whipping around this car, ticked off. That guy behind me was following the law. He was following the speed limit. He was doing what he was supposed to, but he's the bad guy because he's slowing everybody else down. Not really. He's slowing himself down. He can't keep up with everybody else. He's the only one not breaking the law, but he's the only one that's not getting to where he wants to go as fast as everybody else. That's sports in a nutshell. If you want to be the nerd that follows the rules, that wants to recruit the right way, okay, that's fine. You're the loser going 55 on 75 while everyone else is passing you going 75, 80. I brought up the fact that I got pulled over because I'm the only one that day that was going about 70 in the 55, and cop pulls me over and I'm like, are you kidding, sir? Like, I'm keeping up with everybody else. The speed limit's 55. Well, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, I have to do the rules are the rules. I'm the rules are the rules guy, right? Rules are the rules, and I broke them. But my point is I can go the speed limit and be the one that's making everyone else look bad around me, right? Like, I'm ticking off everybody. I'm getting in everybody's way because I'm following the rules, but everyone's like, I'm not going to follow the same rules as you. I'm going to get to where I want to go quicker. I'm going to speed. I'm going to go 75 in this 55, and off they go. More power to them. They get rewarded. They get where they want to go quicker. I'm the one that's just kind of, pedaling along real slow. That's the thing. That's athletics in a nutshell. But anyways, I got sidetracked there. Baseball has all these rules for getting into the Hall of Fame. It's an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke, especially when we pick and choose when we want to use that moral compass. If a baseball player doesn't call me bud, if a baseball player doesn't call me friend, if a baseball player doesn't ask me how my day's going, if a baseball player doesn't say, hey, how are the kids doing? That rubs me the wrong way. So guess what? I'm not going to vote for this clown to get to the Hall of Fame. Half the riders, not all of them. They're big time stand-up riders who have a Hall of Fame vote, and I'm not bashing every single rider out there, but there are too many petty people that have a vote that have already made up their mind about the Hall of Fame voting process for the next however many years that they have one. They're not going to be swayed one way or another. But for baseball to have this high moral compass, it's absolutely ridiculous, considering the fact that the sport is mostly known for trash can banging, sign stealing, substance checks, steroids, and gambling. It truly amazes me how the sport that is best known for all of those things has such a high moral compass for letting their best players in the history of the game in its Hall of Fame. You want to keep the best pitchers in the history of the game out of the Hall of Fame. You want to keep the best home run hitter. You want to keep the best player arguably ever in Barry Bonds out because of a steroid. Now you could say, but Justin, steroids, that's a big deal. You're right. It is a big deal, but everyone else is doing it. You're going to pull me over for going 75 next to the 10 other cars that's going 75, but you zeroed in on me. So clearly you don't have a problem with everyone breaking the law. You just have a problem with me breaking the law. And that's Barry Bonds, because I'm comparing me to Barry Bonds, right? But that's Barry Bonds. You don't have a problem with steroids because I don't see you trying to make a movement to get the guys who haven't busted for steroids since being in out. You just want to keep this guy out. I have a huge problem with that. So Alex Wood he put out a tweet about Barry Bonds. He goes, why does it matter if you were tied to steroids officially or not? Alex Wood goes on to say that there's certainly guys already in the Hall of Fame that took steroids. It doesn't take a genius to see that. Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame, and I really don't think there's an argument to keep him out, in my honest opinion. That was Alex Wood who tweeted that. Of course, it got a lot of reaction, and he's right. I'm not saying you have to support the athletes cheating. I'm not saying you have to root for them to cheat. I'm not saying that you need to go to a game and say, inject that juice. No, you don't have to support it, but you also don't have to pretend to be outraged over it. Let me ask you fans this. You go home from work. You're sitting at your family table, you're sitting at your dinner table with your family, your cute kids over here, cute kids over there, beautiful wife across from you. Loving life. And then breaking news. You find out Barry Bonds takes steroids. Does that ruin the fact that you have beautiful kids, a beautiful wife, a beautiful home? Did that really ruin your life? Why do you care? Why do you care? I just don't understand why we let things in sports just irritate us to that type of degree. Here's the deal. I don't like people. I love sports. I don't like people. People say, well, Justin, you get angry at sports stuff all the time. I'm like, no. I get angry at people. Sports doesn't bother me. You win, you lose. How you get there is how you get there. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes my job interesting. I get to have an opinion based on how teams do it a certain way or not do it a certain way. I have opinions on certain things. But if you notice on this show, I don't get angry at how teams operate. I have opinions on how teams operate. I get angry when people have dumb takes on stuff. Now, that sounds very arrogant of me because, so there's Justin not seeing how other people view things. You don't see how other people view things. We got to stop doing this thing in life where we pretend that there's this high moral compass of how to navigate through life as like, we need to be real respectful of everyone's opinion. What does that even mean? If you have a different opinion than me, have you ever, is your opinion going to persuade me to see it your way? No. Am I going to persuade you to see it my way? No. So why do we need to have a roadmap to get to a destination that we're never going to get to? Stop trying to put your hypocritical moral objectives on people. It's so ridiculous. No one's ever going to change my mind about anything. Anything I view, I'm going to view it that way until I'm ready to view it a different way. Not because you told me to view it a different way. And to be fair, you're the same way. I love when people say, this guy's an absolute moron. Well, for every person that says that, there are a million people saying the same thing about you because just like my opinion that irritates you, you also have an opinion that irritates. It's like a pyramid scheme. Here's Kenner right here. He has an annoying opinion. These 10 people underneath them all find him to be an idiot. They think that they're better than him. And then underneath those 10 people, there's 10 more people underneath each of them that all think the person above them is an idiot. And eventually the entire world becomes a pyramid scheme of everyone thinking that they're smarter than the person ahead of them. That's how it works. That was my pen flying all over the damn place. It amazes me. Stop trying to pretend that you care about Barry Bonds using or not using steroids. Stop trying to pretend that you cared about Roger Clemens or Alex Rodriguez or Jose Canseco. Stop pretending to care. I tune in to be entertained. I don't care if it was clean Sammy Sosa or juiced Sammy Sosa. He entertained me. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if Mark McGwire was on steroids or not on steroids. He entertained me. That's why I tune into sports, to be entertained. I don't tune into sports so that I can read their life story and figure out whether or not that I approve of them or not. I'm not asking them to tell me their life story so I can approve of whether they could date my daughter or not. Like, give me a break. This is just, it's you literally let sports consume you to the point to where you try to judge people for who they are and dictate whether or not you're going to watch them or not. You don't want to watch them, that's fine. There's millions of other people that will and support them. But it just drives me nuts how people try to have this aggressive take on steroids in baseball. And I'm like, it doesn't impact you. It doesn't concern you. Have you ever lost sleep at night because a baseball player was on steroids? Did you ever not get your mortgage payment in on time because a baseball player was on steroids? Did you ever look at your wife or significant other and say, honey, Barry Bonds is on steroids and I just don't think this marriage is going to work? Stop being a wuss. You don't care about steroids. You're pretending to care about steroids. Do you really have deep down a strong-willed feeling about steroids? No, you don't. If you don't like steroids, how about you just don't do them? How about you just don't do them? Simple as that. Not that hard. Alex Wood, I agree with him 1,000,000%. I have no problem with Barry Bonds getting into the Hall of Fame, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not. But the problem is if Barry Bonds gets in or not, it's still going to be a domino effect because there will be dominant players that don't get in because of steroids. If Barry Bonds gets in, okay, that's super, but how many players behind him are not going to get in because they use steroids, right? So you either eliminate the steroid criteria altogether or you keep everyone out altogether, but I think keeping everyone out altogether is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're robbing your sport of its history, a sport that is already difficult to watch nationally. I don't want to hear about TV ratings changing. I think Shaw, actually, that article you sent me, I don't know if you're listening or not, that article from Forbes. I actually like that article from Forbes. I'll share that. It talked about, it was a myth buster article, just kind of about all the myths about baseball, like baseball is dying because of fill in the blank. And then it would go on to kind of, basically bust that myth. It's a myth buster, right? But there was a lot of weird goalposts moving in that. I mean, they're talking about how, well, yes, ratings have dropped in baseball, but that's just because when you compare it to decades ago, there's more to watch right now. Well, that's fine, but there's more to watch. You still want to be the sport that people watch. People still watch the NBA finals. People still watch, obviously the NFL. Yes, people watch the World Series, but not more people should be watching the World Series. You've lost you've lost viewers over the decades, and it's not because there's more options of things to watch. It's because you are not a draw anymore. There's always been options. Sure, there's more options now, but the bottom line is if you are the option, people will watch you. Simple as that. But not a lot of people. Baseball's regional now, at the end of the day. But baseball has to do its best to be as intriguing as possible to everybody. And what used to be intriguing to everybody, Barry Bonds, whether you love baseball or not, you knew who he was, you knew what was going on. Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Alex Rodriguez, Jose Canseco, those guys, whether you liked them or not, liked baseball or not, you knew who the hell they were. Nobody knows who the hell these stars are of today's game unless they're a fan of that particular team's player. That's it. So talk about ratings all you want. Talk about revenue coming into the sport. Yes, it's all money that's coming up front. It's TV money that's coming up front. It's not like there's criteria in there of, hey, we're going to give you this TV contract, but only if you meet certain ratings criteria points throughout the year. I guarantee you, if some of these media rights deals that get done, if they put pressure on these individual teams, if they looked at Bob Castellini and said, hey, you're going to get this $1 billion TV deal, but you need to, win an X amount of games, or you need to at least spend enough money to show, you need to spend enough money on a roster to show that you are giving it your best to compete. And if you don't do that, then what's the purpose of us giving you this? We're just giving you money to not use? No, that's not right. The sponsors aren't getting what they're paying for. They're doing it for that fear of missing out or whatever. But if you look at the money that's going in and the lack of money that's going out from these owners, I mean, it's a beautiful genius mindset on their part. We're going to get a ton of money and I don't even have to spend it. And you wonder why there's 5 teams that have a combined team payroll of less than 10 players in Major League Baseball. It's embarrassing. We'll be back in a moment.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, right here on ESPN 1410 Wing AM.
If you're looking to satisfy those comfort food cravings, we've got just what you're looking for. At Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, homestyle happens here with our 12-piece strips meal for only $32.99. Warm up with a big helping of homestyle. Enjoy 12 all-white meat golden brown breast strips, 3 large freshly prepared sides, and 6 fluffy biscuits. It's the family meal everyone will love. Get a homestyle meal made easy with our 12-piece strips meal for only $32.99. Only at Lee's. Famous for chicken.
Hi, Hi, this is Eddie Sorrell, Service Manager at Germain Honda Beaver Creek, recipient of Honda's President's Award. When your vehicle needs service, we make it convenient. Open 6 days a week, including all day Saturday. We also welcome same-day appointments and walk-ins as well. Our technicians are factory trained, and we offer a new state-of-the-art facility, clean waiting rooms, loaner cars, and free alignment checks as well. Ask for the $99.95 alignment special. Germain Honda Beaver Creek, Route 35, just east of 675 between Xenia and Beaver Creek.
Hey, here to tell you about my friends at Cordell Transportation. They're now hiring Class A CDL drivers and offering a $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Home daily, dedicated lanes, and no-touch freight. Brand new equipment as well. Medical, dental, vision, and company-paid life insurance. Call Cody right now. Apply online at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
At Napa, when it comes to serving you, their motor never quits. From next day delivery and curbside pickup to getting involved with local communities, that's Napa know-how.
Excuse me, I know you have a 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. I'm the business suit in the back of your closet. You wore me nearly every day before your office went, quote, casual. I used to be the CEO of your closet. Now I'm just that one intern no one ever talks to. I always thought you'd circle back with me, get granular, keep me in the pipeline. But nada, nothing. Don't you remember the McKittrick presentation? You spilled coffee on me and I still looked amazing during the breakout talkback Q&A. So I think it's time for me to move on. I've got a great resume and I absolutely crush it in interviews, okay? Let's make this a clean break. Shift the paradigm. The only thing I ask is that you think outside the box here and do this. Take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff, create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, good evening, officer. A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You can kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, I'm a catch, more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
There are many ways to catch the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash on 1410 ESPN Radio, weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. You can catch it live right here on 1410 Wing AM, or you can stream the show at wingam.com. But now we have another way that you can take in the show. You can now watch the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash live on ESPN Dayton's Facebook page. Listen, stream, watch. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio. On Twitter, make sure to give us a follow. Search 1410 Kinner for Justin Kinner on Twitter. That's 1410 KINNER and ESPN Dayton for the station Twitter handle.
All right, welcome back. Justin Kinner hanging out with you here today on a Wednesday. No Kev Nash. Kev Nash off today. He'll be back with us tomorrow. ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz. He'll join us an hour from now. The Dayton Flyers will be back in action tonight. Their last time out on the floor, they won 79-41 over Northern Illinois at UD Arena this past Saturday. And they'll be back in action tonight, this time on the road at SMU, the return game from a season ago, of course. It's an 8 o'clock tip-off. See, I'm still in that college football mode. Everything is kicking off. I keep, previewing and setting up basketball games as well. Kickoff tonight for the Flyers is, well, no, it's a tip-off tonight because we're officially deep into basketball season now as we're wrapping up the football season. But yes, the Dayton Flyers at SMU. I read something today that really caught my attention, that since Anthony Grant has arrived at the Dayton Flyers, that they've never won a true road game. They never won a true road game. Now, to be fair, they don't play many true road games, so I'm not going to try to shape it as, oh, my gosh, in year 4 or 5 or whatever year Anthony Grant's in, oh, my gosh, the guy can't win on the road. They don't play many true road games in the non-conference. I should have made sure I specify that non-conference. In the non-conference, it's never won a true road game, and a true road game is what you're seeing tonight. Like, going on the road at an opponent, not going to some neutral floor. I hate the neutral floor thing. Are the Dayton Flyers doing anything wrong when they do that? No, because every team across basketball does that. But if I can make one change to college athletics, to college basketball, and man, I would have to really, if I really do get this one change, I would eliminate these neutral site tournaments in the non-conference. Now they serve a purpose in regards to, they get a bunch of teams in for like a little invitational type feel. You're able to make a ton of money because, you buy a ticket, you get to watch all these great teams. But I do think it's kind of it lets them off the hook. I don't think you're, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that. I mean, do you get better in these non-conference invitationals where you're playing on a neutral floor? I mean, yeah, you get a chance to play bigger teams. But I don't think you're doing yourself any favors for when you get to conference season, then you have to go play on the road. Like, get your feet wet a bit, go play on the road, get some of those road jitters out of your system. So when you get to the games that matter, like in conference, you kind of got that out of the way. Maybe I'm overblowing that, but I hate neutral site games, not just in basketball, but football as well. Alabama wants to play these big teams in football, but they don't have the guts to do it at their home field or go on the road to face them there. They have to do it at Jerry's World all the time. That's cowardly. Stop. At least the Flyers, they do a lot of these invitationals, but they do get some big home games. I do appreciate the fact that they get, Virginia Tech, and they've had Ole Miss in the past. I mean, look, I respect some of the big games that they get on there. They have way more watered down games than good games, but I think that's the case for any top team in the non-conference as far as that's concerned. But I love seeing the Flyers go out on the road tonight for a true road game at SMU. I hate the neutral site tournaments. I hate them. The only plus side out of it is you get better competition. But imagine if you had, some of these sponsored invitationals and you had home and away teams and you actually, 1 year. So like, for instance, they're playing SMU tonight, but like, imagine if this was a part of some kind of invitational this year. Winner goes on to face the winner of the bracketed team, and then you're on another true road game, or you get to host if you were the higher seed or what have you. I just hate it. Maybe I'm making too much out of nothing, but that's just how I am, and it's not just because it's Dayton. It's the same thing for any team out there. Ohio State played Florida, and I forgot what invitation they just played in. It was just a couple weeks ago, but when they lost to Florida at the buzzer, they were playing in some weird little high school looking gym, and I'm like, imagine if Ohio State was playing at Florida or Florida playing at Ohio State, how much better that would be. That's why I love the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Was at the Duke game last week. I mean, that place was electric. The shot was absolutely unbelievable, but that's because Duke was there. Sure, Ohio State could play Duke on some neutral floor and some little pansy invitational in the non-con, but I love the ACC Big Ten Challenge because you're seeing legitimate brands go up against one another on their home or their way. You know how weird it was seeing Coach K pace the sidelines at the shot? And it's not the first time. I mean, it was not too long ago when Duke played at Ohio State, and Ohio State will play at Duke in the return game. But, you know what I mean? To me, it's fascinating. The entire game, I just kept looking over at Coach K and looking, sitting around him. I'm like, that's Coach K. That's Coach Krzyzewski in the shot. How cool is that? And, when Alabama signed that deal, the home and home to play against Ohio State, I think it's like 2028. That's going to be me. Like, I literally sat back and started picturing. Can you picture Nick Saban? And I've watched every Alabama game that's on every week. So I think with Ohio State, LSU, any big team, good team. I can't imagine what that's going to be like. Nick Saban is most likely not going to be the head coach of Alabama at that time. But I started picturing, imagine if that series happened now. Imagine how cool that would be to look over and see Nick Saban pacing the sideline at the shoe. How cool would that be? That's what it was like last week for me watching Coach Krzyzewski pace the sideline at the shot. How cool was that? It's one thing to see it in a neutral floor, But to see it at the Shot, or, if Ohio State plays at Duke and they pan over to Chris Holtman's coaching, at Cameron Indoor. How cool is that? Ohio State's played at North Carolina. North Carolina's played at the Shot. I love that. I want more of that. I think that's healthier for college athletics. I think that's healthier for college basketball, for the fans' perspective, because there's always a fan's perspective and then there's the business perspective. The Atlanta, what was the Battle for Atlantis, whatever that is, I think UD is in that one coming up again next year as well with Kansas and some others. But keep in mind, it's at the point right now where it's great money for those sponsors and for those invitationals. They're making good money and UD's getting great opponents in it. I mean, that's somehow, some way the Dayton Flyers have established a rivalry with the Kansas Jayhawks because of these little neutral site ones. I love I love Maui. I remember growing up, my favorite thing was when they would do the 24-hour marathon of college basketball. And, you would have the Maui Invitational as part of that. I remember sprinting home after school and trying to catch as much of that as I could before heading to practice for basketball, what have you. But I loved that one. But, I'm not a big fan of them. I'm not. You get good matchups out of them. Rather see those on home floors or away floors. At the end of the day, in college football, I would kill for an SEC Big Ten challenge or an ACC Big Ten challenge in football. That would be so healthy for the sport, and you wouldn't get so many of these annoying bye games because you would get those healthier non-conference games for college football, at least. College basketball, no problem with the bye games. You have to. Wright State is not a program that can do the bye games, like paying opponents to come in. You're not going to pay opponents to come into the Nutter Center. Wright State, at the end of the day, and this isn't a shot, they know who they are. Wright State's the school you pay to come in to play you, right? But UD, the reason, because someone said the other day, Wright State, they can't even get home games. Well, yeah, it's tough. I keep hearing all the time, Neil Sullivan will say, no one wants to come, the athletic director for UD, nobody wants to come play at UD Arena. You say that as if everyone's afraid to come play. The Dayton Flyers at UD Arena. By the way, you should. It's a very tough environment. What did we see? What Virginia lost last night, playing at James Madison or wherever the heck they played. Where did they play last night? Either way, it was a really cool sight to see one of those powers go on the road to play those teams. Cincinnati signed a 3-for-1 deal with Northern Kentucky, or 2-for-1 or 3-for-1. You're going to see Cincinnati go at Northern Kentucky multiple times. We've seen Ohio State play at Cincinnati. They're not afraid to do that. And I'm not really trying to get into the Wright State UD thing here, but I would like to see it. I'll leave it at that. But the point is, the reason UD gets so many more home games than Wright State is because they have to pay those opponents to come in. UD does the whole, it's so difficult to get opponents to come here. Well, you have the option to pay opponents to come. Wright State doesn't have that luxury. Believe it or not, teams don't want to go play at the Nutter Center either. But the arrogance of the fan base drives me nuts at times because it's, no one wants to come play Dayton at home because they're afraid of Dayton. Well, no one wants to go play Wright State at the Nutter Center either. Oh, well, that's just different. They don't want to go play at the Nutter Center. No, there's a reason. Michigan State hasn't been back in 21 years, right? I know that there's a reason some of those games happen at times for little recruiting promises and stuff, but Michigan State played at the Nutter Center back in 2000. That was the year that Michigan State won the national championship. In fact, for as dominant of a Big Ten, for as dominant of a conference as the Big Ten is in college basketball, that's the last time they won a national championship, by the way. But yeah, so Wright State beat Michigan State back in 2000. That's why I laugh when people say, oh man, UD has so much more to lose than Wright State if they play. I'm like, I don't even understand how you're stupid enough to believe that, because at the end of the day, Michigan State lost at the Nutter Center and still went on to win a national championship. I have no clue what the hell that even means. So it is what it is. But I went on I'm zigging and zagging today a lot. It is what it is. Kevin's not here to kind of keep me down one lane. So you're stuck with my rambling for the rest of the show. But nonetheless, excited to see the Dayton Flyers back on the road tonight at SMU. 8 o'clock is the tip-off. It's on ESPN Plus tonight. A tough stretch for the Flyers coming up. They're at SMU tonight. They got Virginia Tech at home on Sunday. That's a 2 o'clock tip-off. And then they'll be at Ole Miss. How about that? At Ole Miss on Saturday the 18th. That's a 6:30 tip-off. And then they got Southern. And I said, well, if this, and that sounds like a daunting task. I mean, you have SMU, Virginia Tech, and Ole Miss back-to-back games. But if this season has taught us anything about the Dayton Flyers, is that I'm not concerned about SMU, I'm not concerned about Virginia Tech, and I'm not concerned about Ole Miss. The team I'm concerned about is Southern. Like that's kind of what this season has taught us. Coming into the season, nobody would have said, "Oh man, I'm worried about UMass Lowell, Lipscomb, and Austin Peay. I'm worried about Miami and Kansas and teams like that." Well, you lose to UMass Lowell, Lipscomb, and Austin Peay, and then you go on to beat Miami and Kansas and Belmont to win that ESPN Events Invitational. If this season's taught us anything, I'm not worried about SMU, Virginia Tech, or Ole Miss. It's that Southern game coming up to close out the non-con before heading into A10 play that I'd be worried about. Sarcasm, of course. Relax, not taking a shot, but I'm excited for tonight. I love if UD was playing SMU in some neutral site tournament, sure, I'm definitely going to watch, but it kind of loses a little bit of its feel. They're playing at SMU. I love that. They're playing, at home against Virginia Tech, and then next year they'll be at Virginia Tech, right? Or then you're at Ole Miss, or is this the return for Virginia Tech? Can't remember how that one worked, but either way. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Mine is Kev Nash. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll talk some NFL coming up around the corner. 5 games remaining in the National Football League for your Browns and for your Bengals, and I started kind of doing the little win-loss, column and to close out the season, and there is a very good chance that the ultimate scenario could be the Browns and the Bengals playing for a playoff spot. The Browns and the Bengals in that Week 17 matchup, that could be a playoff game. I'll talk about all that coming up at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. Plus, we have Jason Fitz, and now we're number 2 as well. Don't go anywhere.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash.
Justin, you're awesome, baby.
Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
At Napa, when it comes to serving you, their motor never quits. From next day delivery and curbside pickup to getting involved with local communities, that's Napa know-how.
5G is here, but the big carriers want you to sign a pricey long-term contract to get in on the action. Well, no more, because Straight Talk Wireless has rolled out 5G coverage nationwide, with plans starting at just $35 a month with no contract. And get a Samsung Galaxy A32 5G for only $299, all on America's best networks. 5G coverage, 5G phones, less money. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. 5G capable device required, actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary.
From city streets to back roads, from road warrior to carpooler, there are some things you can always count on, like the reliability, durability, and power of DieHard, America's most trusted auto battery. No matter where your journey takes you, count on DieHard to get you started on the road ahead. Available at your local Advance Auto Parts and participating CarQuest stores.
If you need new roofing, siding, or gutters, skylights, or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner or business and need someone you can trust, don't take a chance. Enhance with Lance. Lance Roofing and Siding in Fairborn has been satisfying customers since 1993 and hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Lance Roofing and Siding, 8460 Dayton Springfield Road in Fairborn. Call for a free estimate at 864-2722. That's 864-2722 or online at lanceroofing.com.
Take home Fricker's Holiday Feast. Frickin' yum, 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 yum. Our gift cards always pleased. Frickin' yum, 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 yum.
Take home 4 pounds of frickin' chicken chunks for only $29.99, carry out only. Buy a $25 Frickers gift card and you'll get 5 frickin' bonus bucks free. The ho, ho, ho! For fun, food, sports, and spirits, Frickers.
Frickin' yum, yum.
Whether you're at home, at work, or in your car, tune in to ESPN 1410 Wing AM or stream us live at wingam.com. The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty, weekdays at 3 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Justin Kinner back with you here on Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM. We are live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Head there now and jump in on the conversation there. UDFan07 on YouTube says, another thing that annoys me about the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, it's the Baseball Hall of Fame, but I know what you're saying, is how they make a player choose what team they wear on the plaque. They should do what the NFL does. Actually, I agree with that 1,000,000% because, like, especially it wasn't as big of a talking point back then because, players didn't bounce around as often. I'm not saying players never bounced around, but the way players bounce around now, it's unbelievable. Like the stars of today's game, outside of like Mike Trout, who's somehow stuck with the Angels this entire time, and he enjoys not making the playoff, apparently. When he gets inducted to the Hall of Fame, clearly he's going to be known as an Angel, but it's really difficult for some of these guys who bounce around so much. I mean, it really is. Like, I don't know how we're going to look at some of these guys when they get inducted to the Hall of Fame and really look at them and say, oh, yeah, he's known for that team. They're going to have 4 or 5 different teams that they're going to have to pick from. You look at a guy like Albert Pujols when he gets to the Hall of Fame, of course, unless, of course, we keep him out, too, because of all the juicing rumors and all that fun stuff, right? Like, at the end of the day, that's going to be, he's a Cardinal, but he spent just as much time with the Angels. But his numbers aren't terrible with the Angels either, but he's known for his success with the Cardinals, but he'll be known as a Cardinal. But the Angels fans are going to be like, you spent a lot of time with us, too. Like, I actually was kind of shocked at how long he was there. When Joey Votto signed his contract in 2012 with the extension with the Reds, and that contract is not even up yet, Albert Pujols had also, had just signed that long-term deal with the Angels as well. That was a huge long-term contract with the Angels, and that contract's already done. Like one of my favorite stories about the Reds, especially, obviously had a lot to do with Watt Jocketty coming over from the Cardinals, and obviously, the Castellinis and all that. They wanted Albert Pujols. They offered Albert Pujols a contract. They were going to go after him. When he turned that down and took the Angels, money, that's when the Reds took that same money they were going to invest into Pujols and invested it into Joey Votto. And to be honest, I don't think the Reds missed out on anything. If anything, they got the way better end of the deal from the player that they paid for. Joey Votto had a million times better 10-year run since the contract signing with Albert with the Angels and of course Joey Votto with the Reds. But as a team, you got to think when you spend money on these players, what's the purpose of spending money on these players? What's your ROI? I respect the teams that when they spend money on players, it's to get something back in regards to wins, not, oh, well, at least we have a face of the franchise. Joey Votto's main purpose with the Reds has always been, well, we just need you to be the face of a bad franchise. And that's been Joey Votto. Unfortunately, that's his legacy. And unfortunately, that's not a legacy he gets to pick or move on from. He technically had, because you always have a choice. He could have demanded a trade. He could have demanded to be moved to a better team. He stuck it out in Cincinnati, and now some will look at that as loyal. Reds fans will. Do you think baseball fans around the country, when it comes time to talking about Votto and the Hall of Fame and all that, you think that they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt of being a loyal guy? No, they're just going to remember a really good player on a really bad team for a decade. That's basically what Joey Votto's legacy is as a Cincinnati Red. His legacy will be viewed at differently amongst Reds fans. But big picture, do we give other players the benefit of the doubt when they have similar runs? I'm looking at the Angels and Trout, and I'm like, I don't get it. Statistically, on pace with the best of all time in Major League Baseball, and I just don't care. I don't care. He's a very good ball player, but if it's not leading to team success, I don't care. I will take an average player's production on a really good team over great production from a player on a bad team, because at least you're competing and you're producing for an end goal. Joey Votto is going out there, especially in the early part of that contract, and just Joey Votto bangs, right? That's what everyone said, hitting the snot out of the ball. What did it get the Reds? Didn't get him anything. Yes, he was a part of that playoff, little stretch with Dusty Baker, but the Reds decided to move on from Dusty Baker, and look what you get. Below mediocre baseball. So it's frustrating as far as that's concerned. Like, I don't know what Votto's legacy is going to be. Like, if you sit back and think, what is Joey Votto's legacy with the Cincinnati Reds? I have to sit back and I'm like, just a good player, very, very good player on a average to below average team, and bad more times than not. The highlight of their 5 straight rebuilding seasons was the fact that they never lost 100 games. That's so sad. That's sad that I see Reds fans defending themselves. So when I see Reds fans and Astros fans and Reds fans and Tigers fans and Reds fans and Cubs fans all arguing on social media about whose teams were worse, and the Reds fans are saying, "Oh, how many 100-loss seasons did you have? We haven't even had a 100-loss season in this decade." I'm like, that's a weird flex. That's what the Reds front office has given us Reds fans is that excuse of, well, how many 100-loss seasons did the Cubs have in their rebuild? The Astros they had multiple 100-loss seasons. The Tigers have had multiple 100-loss seasons. Well, the Astros took those 100-loss seasons, turned them into multiple World Series appearances, including a World Series. The Cubs, they took those 100-loss seasons and they turned them into a World Series and have been a contender ever since. The Tigers, they've won a World Series in more recent history than the Cincinnati Reds, so I'm not going to sit there and mock that organization. And the Reds, okay, sure, you have a couple 90-loss seasons. Okay, cool, tip of the hat to you for not losing 100, but what has that gotten you? It's gotten you a very average team that has your ownership afraid to make any kind of move. You're just good enough to compete, so they don't want to get rid of too many pieces, but they also are too cheap to add any pieces because they still feel like it won't be good enough to make them contenders. It's very interesting. An article came out earlier today it was on ESPN.com about, some of the shocking moves that you could see, bold moves for every Major League Baseball team heading into the 2022 season. They're bold moves, aggressive moves, but all realistic. Now, keep in mind the Cincinnati Reds lost star outfielder, and Nick Castellanos. And Castellanos, let's keep in mind, they've lost him. He's still available. All of the free agents that signed those humongous deals before the lockout, they got some big time money. Everyone that signs after the lockout's not going to get that money. There's going to be a lot of ownerships who are cheap coming out of the gates. These players are not going to get the money that they're looking for. I'm not saying that there won't be one player that gets it, but I mean, all the players that were banking on themselves coming out of the lockout to get some bigger contracts, that's not going to happen. Castellanos is not going to get as much money as what he anticipated getting because coming out of the lockout, that's going to be the end result. I still don't think the Reds have a chance to get him, but according to this article on ESPN.com, the bold moves for every Major League Baseball team heading into the 22 season, the player that the Reds should heavily and aggressively target, Tom Brenneman will be disappointed that he's not calling games for the Reds if they pull this off. But how about Kyle Schwarber? I know the Reds, they're busy aligning their payroll to their resources or whatever corporate speak they used to describe their offseason plan. But while they're at it, they ought to go ahead and just acquire some offense because with the right position player, honestly, especially when you have a guy, like Jesse Winker and you have, Jonathan India coming into his own and maybe you get Eugenio Suarez to kind of return to form. I mean, that's always the big question coming in every year. But with the right position player upgrades, the Reds pitching, that's going to be good enough, to make them interesting. They're going to be just good enough to where you can't necessarily write them off. Their chances next season in the NL Central, I'm not writing them off. I still think that the Cubs are going to be the team to beat, but we do this same song and dance every year. We talk heavily about what the Reds need to do to compete. We constantly look at the Cubs and just anoint them as the face of the NL Central, and rightfully so. We forget about the Brewers. We keep the Cardinals off in our peripherals, and we just kind of keep an eye on them, and then the Brewers end up being the Brewers. They end up being the dominant team in the division. The only team that the Reds are better than in this division right now is the Pirates. Even if they add Schwarber, I don't think that the Reds move ahead of the Cardinals. I don't think that the Reds move ahead of the Brewers or the Cubs. But I do like the concept. If the Reds come out and add a Kyle Schwarber, I'm fine with that. I would love that. If the Reds come out and actually start adding some key pieces, maybe, just maybe, I am willing to sit back, as critical as I was of the Reds front office. I've been very aggressive, saying how I can't believe how soft they're being. They're not being aggressive. They're not going after any key free agents to better this roster. You have some key pieces that make you an interesting team. Why would you not go after any pieces right now? Don't give me this corporate speak of trying to align our resources to fit, whatever it is that they said. But I'm a big fan of that idea of them going after him. Signing Schwarber, it to me would be perfect. He's from Ohio. Not far from Cincinnati. We know how those pro teams in Cincinnati love signing local guys. That's why the Bengals took a chance on Jackson Carman for whatever reason. But he can DH, which really isn't a big deal too much in the, the National League. But in those, American League matchups that they have, that would be, key right there. But it is what it is. Could spell Joey Votto. That's the other thing, too, is he could play first base. And you don't have to move Moustakas. You can keep him where he's comfortable playing a little bit, right? Like you could be flexible. I actually think Kyle Schwarber checks off a lot of boxes for the Reds, and I really hope that they go after him. And I would think that with Schwarber being from within the area, that the Reds would be a pretty interesting place for him to play as well. And he's a power hitter. He can hit the snot out of the ball. It's a hitter's ballpark. He's a versatile player. He can play in the outfield. He can play at first base. You can move him around. I like the idea of Kyle Schwarber in Cincinnati. So this list from ESPN.com that came out earlier today, bold moves for every MLB team heading into the 2022 season. Kyle Schwarber is listed as the key player that the Reds should target, and I agree with it 1,000,000%. There's some pop in this lineup still. You still have Jesse Winker. You have Jonathan India. You have that key leadoff hitter. Now, Jonathan India is one of the best leadoff hitters in all of baseball, and he was as a rookie. Imagine what another full off season is going to do, another full season in baseball. Jonathan India is fantastic. Okay. If Joey Votto, like he says that he tweaked whatever he needed to tweak to be effective heading into next season, if that carries over from this year, now you have Jonathan India. Now you have Joey Votto's producing now. You have Jesse Winker. You add a Kyle Schwarber. You still have Mike Moustakas, and hopefully, he's less Zion and, he's less Zion and more, in shape heading into the season. As negative as I've been about the Reds, I was all caught up in my emotion and feelings about the Reds. As I sit back and kind of decompress a bit, I'm like, they're not in that bad a shape, especially considering the fact that they did not trade Tyler Mahle, they did not trade Sonny Gray, and they did not trade Luis Castillo. I would only be panicking if they had traded or moved on from one of those guys. But the fact that they still have them, I'm still not happy about Alex Wood. I'm not happy about them moving on from Wade Miley, but I think that the Reds have enough firepower to still be an interesting team. But if you add a Kyle Schwarber, Eugenio Suarez returns to form, I think they're in good shape with Joey Votto and Jonathan India. Tyler Stevenson's the number one catcher now for the Reds. Seeing him take that next big step. Can Barrero be that shortstop that everyone keeps trying to tell us that he is going to be? There's a reason that the Reds headed into this past season without a true shortstop, because they were just trying to buy time. They really were just trying to buy time for Barrero, because they know all the hype about Barrero is that he's baseball's next big shortstop, right? Well, just because he's not there yet doesn't mean you want to technically move on from him at this very moment, and it doesn't mean you want to go spend big dollars to go get a big name shortstop there. I know Kyle Farmer actually did a pretty solid job at shortstop, but he's not your shortstop. Kyle Farmer was kind of a stopgap guy, and he's going to be a utility guy. Kyle Farmer is a great guy to have on the roster. I like having a Kyle Farmer on the roster. I don't like the idea of making a roster full of Kyle Farmers, and the Reds love that. They love to go get players that could play multiple positions. The reason I like Schwarber is Schwarber can be elite at any position he plays. Is he top 5 at any position he plays? No, but he can hit the hell out of the ball, but he can play first base. He's obviously a good outfielder. He'll be fine. I love Kyle Schwarber. What I don't like about baseball is you have too many teams who do this thing where they go about, well, let's go get this guy who's a utility player who can play multiple positions. That's fine. But would you rather have a utility player that could play multiple positions at an average rate, or would you rather have a couple players who are elite at their particular position? Would you rather have an elite third baseman and an elite shortstop? Or would you rather have a guy like Kyle Farmer who can play a little, who's okay at third, who's okay at short? I'm actually curious your guys' thoughts on that. We'll step away for a few moments, but I am kind of curious as we try to squeeze a little baseball talk in this week. What kind of players should the Reds target more of? Because they have too many guys that can play multiple positions, and that's good to have, especially deep into the season when you get into July when there's a lot of injuries. But I never really know what the right approach is to build a roster when it comes to that. You want utility guys who could play multiple positions. It adds a little depth. But when you try to build a roster of Kyle Farmers, that frustrates me, because Kyle Farmer can play shortstop. He can play third base. But he's not elite at first base, and he can play a little outfield. But he's not elite at second base. He's not elite at first. He's not elite at short. He's not elite at third. Wouldn't you rather have an elite shortstop as opposed to having an average shortstop who can play multiple positions at an average level? I mean, I don't know. But baseball has transitioned into that, where they're making up rosters with a lot of utility guys. And I'm like, man, I'd rather just have one set dominant kick-ass third baseman and one kick-ass shortstop than to have an average guy that could play multiple positions at an average level. I don't know. We'll be back in a moment.
The Montgomery County Clerk of Courts Help Center brings the courthouse to the community with its weekly outreach programs to local churches, libraries, and community centers. We help you navigate the legal system. Find a location near you at courthouse2u.com. Brought to you by Montgomery County Clerk of Courts Mike Foley. Cordell Transportation is now hiring Class A CDL drivers. $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, $5,000 sign-on bonus. Home daily dedicated lanes, no-touch freight. Apply today at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
At Napa, when it comes to serving you, their motor never quits. From next day delivery and curbside pickup to getting involved with local communities, that's Napa know-how.
You're listening to Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM. We're live. We're local. We're Dayton's ESPN radio station. Now, let's send it to the WING studios for Dayton's only local sports talk show. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Orion Sports Medicine.
Back after a quick breather, I want to pick up with this Kyle Schwarber conversation because this article that ESPN released earlier talking about some of the bold moves that every Major League Baseball team can make heading into the 2022 season. The one move that they are adamant that the Reds need to make, especially if they are trying to take a step forward and being competitive in 2022, the one player that they should target is Kyle Schwarber. I love that for a lot of different reasons. For one, he's really, really good. He's had success within the division, so he knows how to play in the NL Central. He's a power hitter, and the Reds can always use more power hitters. And on top of that, a power hitter at Great American Ballpark, a guy that's versatile, a guy that could play multiple positions. He could spell Joey Votto at first base. He could play in the outfield. I saw Jake Whiting in the comments section say he could even play catcher. And you know what? We all know how much the Reds love platooning positions. And if you have an opportunity, you're not going to platoon him at catcher, but you see what I'm saying. I love that idea. I heard it originally about Kyle Schwarber, and I'm like, no, forget it. But who am I as a Reds fan to sit here and say to any potential star player that the Reds could potentially go get? I don't know what it would cost to get Schwarber. I really don't. But as I currently sit here right now looking at a big picture, I think that would be a great move. And the one thing I forgot about too, the DH. The DH is not in the National League. I know. People are already like, God, he's an idiot. He thinks that the DH is in the National League. Keep in mind, it's the collective bargaining agreement that is going. I mean, that's what they're working out. They're ironing out details. The DH, it's either there's a realistic shot that is going to be a part of what comes out of this negotiation. So now if you get a Kyle Schwarber, if the DH is added, if it's added to the National League, look out. Kyle Schwarber would make the Reds instantly better with or without the DH, but my goodness, a Kyle Schwarber on this Reds roster right now with the DH, that's a whole other conversation to have right there. But Schwarber is versatile. He can play multiple positions. He's a power hitter. He can hit the snot out of the ball. He's a draw at Cincinnati, mainly because of the fact he's from the area, right? And if he is the Reds' next big star player, along with Jesse Winker, a homegrown player through the system, brought up and an all-star last year, imagine if you had Schwarber to that. It was cool last year in the All-Star game in Colorado, seeing that you had, you had Jesse Winker and you had Nick Castellanos, two Cincinnati Reds players starting for the National League in the outfield. You can have that again with Schwarber and Jesse Winker. All right. Again, they've taken forever to figure out what they want to do with their leadoff hitter. They tried so many different things. Billy Hamilton's supposed to be that guy. That was one topic I want to do when we have more time one time is what is the one player that you wanted to work out that didn't? That if you can go back and you had a wish and that wish could come true and that you wish that this player would have worked out, who would that be? For me, it would be Billy Hamilton, no questions asked. There's not a lot of draws in Major League Baseball, and I think that if Billy Hamilton had the ability to get on base more, just with his speed, his charisma, his weird voice, I think that he would be a draw across Major League Baseball. And despite his talent, he was a draw. People loved Billy Hamilton. Fans loved him. When he come to Dayton for the Caravan, people went nuts for him. When they would introduce everybody in the Caravan and they'd be like, everyone would cheer for each player or each media member or each, former Hall of Famer, or not former Hall of Famer, but Hall of Famer, former Red player. But when they would introduce Billy Hamilton, the kids would go nuts. I loved Billy Hamilton. I hate that it didn't work out because I actually thought he was very, very good in center field, fast as hell on the base paths. I thought he had everything that you needed to be a star, that he stood out from everybody else. There's too many players in baseball that just blend in. Too many players that all look like one another, that are all built kind of the same, that have the same type of, you know what I mean? Like baseball doesn't have enough diversity is definitely not the word I'm looking for, but like there's just not a whole lot of players that separate themselves from others. You know, if I watch one baseball game more times than not, I've watched all baseball games for that season. You know, you watch the NBA, there are 20, 30 players in the NBA alone that all do something really, really well, all differently. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis, two of the best bigs in the National Basketball Association. Man, they could not be any different. But they play the same position, very versatile. Man, they could not be any different, but they're both just as fun to watch. Giannis is better, yes. You watch LeBron James, there's no other LeBron James in the NBA. You watch Kevin Durant, there's no other Kevin Durant in the NBA. Kyrie Irving, no other Kyrie Irving in the NBA. You know, you watch the Cleveland Cavaliers team right now. I mean, you see these rookies coming in. They could not be any different from one another. Obi Toppin, there's only one Obi Toppin in the NBA. Obi Toppin, man, I really wish I could find out how I would view him if he wasn't a former Dayton Flyer. Like, I feel like when I'm watching him out on the floor, I'm still picturing him at UD Arena. So when I watch him play with the Knicks, I'm like, man, they're preventing him from taking that next step to be a star in the NBA. But I'm like, is that homeristic approach of, you know, because I keep seeing that on Twitter where people are like, oh man, they're holding him back. If they only gave him more minutes. I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of players that don't get minutes in the NBA. It's because they're not as good as as they think they are, that you think they are. But with Obi, we're getting real defensive. And I can't tell, is this a situation where a really, really good player in the NBA is being held back? I don't know. But I give Obi a crap ton of credit because that dude maximizes the limited minutes that he gets on a night in, night out basis. But there's no other Obi Toppin in the league. I mean, he could dunk the hell. I mean, Zach LaVine was kind of similar for a while where he was known for his dunks, but he was just an below average player. Now he's exploded the last couple of years. And I envision that same kind of path for Obi, you know, throughout his journey in the NBA. But that's basketball. In the NFL, you look at all the star quarterbacks in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, the biggest star of them all, my guy, Baker Mayfield, right? No. But you look at the star quarterbacks across the board, Justin Herbert, everybody. None of them look the same or play the same. And I'm not talking skin color, nothing like that. I mean, like the way that they play, like style of play. Like Lamar Jackson, not one other quarterback even comes close to looking like him out on the field the way he plays. Or playing like him. Patrick Mahomes, elite quarterback. Nobody plays the game the way he does or throws the ball the way he does. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Same thing with Tom Brady. Justin Herbert. Every one of those guys has a very distinct way that they play that position. Same thing at the running back position. Look at the dominant running backs in the NFL. Whether you look at the Colts running back, when you look at, Nick Chubb, you look at Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb are two of the most dominant running backs in the NFL, and they couldn't be any more different. That's what makes the NFL so special. That's what makes the NBA so special. With baseball, you watch one baseball player, you've watched them all. I hate baseball for doing it that way because the advanced analytics aren't always broken down on a player-by-player basis. It's always about, well, as a whole, the numbers as a whole show we should all swing this way. We should all run this way. We should all shift this way. Instead of realizing that, hey, maybe we don't need to shift this guy because he's super fast. He can cover a lot more ground. Maybe we could be a little bit more versatile. No, they've taken all the creativity out of the game of baseball. You watch one baseball team, you watch every baseball team. That's the problem I have with baseball. It drives me up the wall. All of that started from Billy Hamilton. My ADD is on fire today, by the way. But live on Facebook, going to some of the comments in the comment section right here. Jake Whiting also talks about Sonny Gray, saying, heard that they were close to a Sonny Gray deal with the Dodgers before the lockout. I do believe that the Reds are kicking the tire. I think the Reds are in that fork in the road, right? Like they are tinkering with the idea of rebuilding, but also just trying, I think what they are trying to do right now is, okay, if we hit the reset button, if we did start the rebuild, what would we get for the prospects on our roster now? What could Sonny Gray get us? Could Sonny Gray get us enough pieces back that it would make us feel confident about the direction we're heading in with the rebuild? If we moved on from Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray and Tyler Malley, if we moved on from all three of those guys and just said, you know what, we're going to build around Nick Lodolo, we're going to build around Hunter Green, and just hit we're going to build around Jonathan India and Jesse Winker. If we build around those four moving forward, what could the other pieces get us in return to put around them or to build them up in our system? And I think that that's what they're doing. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, Jake and the rest of you Reds fans. I kind of believe that the Reds, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to be as critical of them today. I think that it's actually kind of smart what they're doing if they are dangling players out there. You would hate to just assume that you wouldn't get much back for a Sonny Gray or a Luis Castillo or a Tyler Malley. There might be that one team that blows your socks off with an offer that you're like, holy smokes. So I can get how many first rounders for this dude? I can get how many top prospects from your organization for this guy? Oh, man. So then when you combine all the prospects you get for all of those guys, it's like, man, we just replenished our farm system and we got some studs that we're going to be, calling up here in the near future, and we're going to be really, really good. I think it's okay to at least kick the tires on that. And I think that's what's going on with Sonny Gray. But I also believe there is a side of the Reds that are like, okay, we kick the tires on it. We don't feel like we have enough assets to get enough back to justify a rebuild at this time. They had more than enough assets back when they hit the rebuild, back in 2014. I think they waited too long, obviously. But you had Johnny Cueto, right? Like they got robbed on the Cueto deal, right? But you had Johnny Cueto, you had Todd Frazier, you had Jay Bruce, you had so many big-time players on that roster that they were confident that they were going to get enough of a haul back, especially with Johnny Cueto being that key piece. Between Johnny Cueto, between Michael Leake, between Chapman, between Todd Frazier, between Jay Bruce, they were just adamant. And, at the time, I think they thought they were going to have something special in Devin Mesoraco. Devin Mesoraco, he was on the verge of being one of my all-time favorite Reds players, but his success window with the Reds was so dang short. But they had so many star players that they're like, man, we unload all of these guys, we're going to get a buttload of prospects back. We'll be fine. Well, their cockiness and arrogance got the best of them because they got crap back. They didn't get anything back worthwhile, right? Luis Castillo might have been the best piece they got back throughout that entire rebuild, and they gave up. I've already forgot his name, too, by the way. He was a solid pitcher. He had one really, really good year for the Reds. They moved on from him. Reds fans were ticked off, and the guy never had a repeat season of what he did with the Reds. Luis Castillo was the best piece that the Reds got throughout the entire rebuild, and they didn't even get him through one of their star players. So it was a horrible... This situation, I think the Reds think they have a few stars that they can get pieces back for, and I think they're just dangling them out there to see what they can get, to see if it's even worth hitting the reset button. As I've had more time to sit back and kind of look at what's going on, that's kind of what I feel is going on. I think that the Reds are closer to wanting to compete than to hit the reset button, but I think they're doing their due diligence and kicking the tires on that potential outcome. We shall see. Brian Staley says, I would be shocked if Kyle Schwarber is not one of the top 3 DH hitters in the American League in the coming seasons, but it would be a solid pickup for the Reds. I beyond agree with you. I would love to see the Reds pick him up. It's crazy to me how throughout the day this has grown on me more because I thought, Kyle Schwarber, okay, it's a good pickup. But it's really grown on me from when I read this article at 10 a.m. this morning to where I am right now. I'm like, oh, heck yes, go get Kyle Schwarber, especially if part of the result of this collective bargaining agreement on the other side is the DH in the National League as well. I think that would make it even more interesting. Let's see. What are we talking about? So Scott Campbell says, if that multi-positional player is elite like Chris Bryant, that sure would give me a few. I would for sure get a few of them. However, those players are rare and eventually settle into one position as their career progresses. Scott, thank you for that. Yeah, like it is rare to find a all-star player that is versatile to play a couple positions, right, at a decent level. But I will take a star player that's versatile that maybe wouldn't be as elite at their second or third position, but as long as you can out-hit the gap and deficiencies you have at multiple positions, I'm fine with that. Like Kyle Farmer is not a good enough hitter for me to accept average shortstop play, average third and first base play, average outfield play. Like if he's an average outfielder but can hit the hell out of the ball, super. If he's an average utility first baseman and can hit the hell out of the ball, super. But what you can't be is average hitter, average utility player. That's what the Reds settle for that too much. I think you need a couple Kyle Farmers on your roster, but the Reds have too many of those guys. That's why they keep kicking the tires on all of these spring training invite guys, because they're just hoping that some of these guys can kind of pan out to be average at something. And it's frustrating, really, at the end of the day, is how I view that. Brian Staley says everyone outside of catcher Wilson Contreras and first base Anthony Rizzo played 2 positions on that 2016 team. But they had enough depth, though. I'm with you, Brian, but the Reds just don't have depth. You can't have this mindset of, we're going to build a roster full of utility guys, but they not have enough depth to be able to capitalize on that. I agree with you. The Cubs, though, had depth everywhere, and they had stars that could play multiple positions. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. Still on Facebook. Doug Toby says, was it Matt Latos? Remember, Latos wasn't likable. Latos was good. Wasn't good the entire stretch, but he was good. There was a stretch where, remember that? I mean, there was Mike Leake, there was Latos, there was Cueto. I know I'm missing some key. Was Arroyo a part of that? Doug, help me out with that. I cannot remember. That year, I think it was 2012, where the Reds, I don't think a starting pitcher missed any games. I think the Reds were one of the healthiest teams in baseball that entire stretch. That was unheard of. Every starter was healthy from beginning to end. I'm not saying they didn't miss one single game, but they never had to go on the DL for long stretches of time. I mean, it was unbelievable. Latos was a pit bull for a good stretch of time. Obviously, that wasn't the case the whole stretch, but help me out with that one, if you will. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on 1410 ESPN Radio, Orion Sports Medicine, Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street, and Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Shout out to our sponsors that help us bring you the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. But if you're just joining us, this conversation started because of the potential of adding Kyle Schwarber to this Reds roster. I think that accomplishes a lot of things. You're going to replace Nick Castellanos with a power hitter, with an outfielder, with an all-star outfielder. And I think that puts the Reds right back into position where they were a year ago. Sure, they're going to have some gaps of looking for, some pieces to add to the rotation and all that. But I think Hunter Green is very close to being called up. I think he could be a part of the rotation or the bullpen next season, right? Am I that far off in thinking that could be a possibility? I'm really, as much as people talk about Hunter Green, I am really intrigued by Nick Lodolo. There is a very good chance that Nick Lodolo ends up being the better of the two. There's a very good chance of that. Hunter Green's getting all of the attention, all of the press, and he has all of the tools, and he looks the part and everything else. Nick Lodolo has a lot of those same tools as well, but everyone's focused on Hunter Green, and I'm like, that's the guy you really need to be looking at right there. I mean, he's big. He doesn't look like a lot of pitchers in baseball. I think he can get the job done, but either just Hunter Green. I think those two right there, if those two pan out, that's where the Reds are going to click. That's when the Reds are really going to have it all come together. Because if you have Sonny Gray, if you have Luis Castillo, obviously you have Tyler Mahle, if you tinker with the idea of adding Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green in there, look out. Because you have TJ Antone in the bullpen. All right. You have some key, Amir Garrett, please, for the love of goodness, figure it out, man. That's another player. Remember I said earlier about Billy Hamilton. If there's one player that I wish would have worked out, Amir Garrett's one of those guys too. He's a personality. He's a draw. I look forward when I look forward to watching him on the mound. I didn't last year as the season went on for obvious reasons, but I will always respect the fact that he literally took on the entire Pirates roster that day. He did not wait for teammates to come hold him back. He just dropped down the glove and went jumping into the pile like it was a mosh pit. I will always respect that because in a sport that tries to pretend to be tough with the hold me back fights, Amir Garrett said, you're not going to disrespect me. You're not going to disrespect my team. You're not going to disrespect my manager. And he went and he got his. I will always respect him for that. Baseball needs more of that. Maybe not so much those Malice at the Palace type brawls, but they need guys like that who are not going to be afraid to stare you down and go after you. I've always loved that about him, but you got to back it up with the performance on the field. I'm a huge Amir Garrett fan. That would be so cool if he could figure that out. TJ Antone was fantastic. The Reds have the pieces. They're close. I don't anticipate them adding a lot of good pieces coming out of this break, but man, give us something. Give us Kyle Schwarber. That's all I got to say about that. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We're going to be joined by ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz on the other side. We will talk about the Final Four in the college football playoff. Alabama, number 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. Alabama against Cincinnati. And you get Michigan against Georgia, plus a long list of really good bowl games that we'll talk about with Jason Fitz. We'll also preview the final 5 games of the season, the race to the finish line, the Browns, the Bengals, That AFC North. I don't know if it's the best division in football. I don't even want to say it's the most competitive division in football. Usually when you say that about a division that is just winning, and they're just left hook, right hook, but these guys look so bad at times. The Ravens are winning ugly, hideous games. The Browns are winning ugly, hideous games. The Bengals are winning games with their quarterback at times throwing under for 200 yards. I mean, the AFC North, it's not pretty, but it's at least interesting. And we'll talk about that with Jason Fitz on the other side. More of the Justin Kinder Show when we come back.
It's the Justin Kinder Show with Kev Nash, right here on ESPN 1410 Wing AM. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
This afternoon will be partly cloudy, a high near 40. Tonight will also be partly cloudy, a low near 24. And tomorrow will be partly cloudy, a high near 50. I'm Pete Spivak for 1410 ESPN Radio.
You love Zoom for video meetings? Now, choose Zoom to power your phone communications too. Zoom Phone works seamlessly within the Zoom app as your business phone system. Zoom Phone's secure HD audio and enterprise-grade reliability keep you connected to your teams and your customers. And it's easy to use on mobile, desktop, or desk phone. Empower your workforce with Zoom Phone. Zoom, how the world connects.
Hey, Chrissy, it's Leo. We're going to need some backup on Friday night, okay?
Leo's Limos needs to say I do to 4 commercial drivers.
You booked another wedding on Saturday?
Before wedding season.
No. I'll make it work.
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
You know a spot, but not just a spot, the spot. Actually, with the all-new Nissan Frontier, you know a bunch of them. But the key to these great spots? Being able to reach them in the first place. Your spot is out there. Find your Frontier in the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier with standard 310 horsepower, advanced tech, and 281 pound-foot of torque.
You have empty office space to fill or home office to create. You know what you need. You know what you'd like. But you also have a pretty good idea after you've shopped around the usual places what you need and what you like might not happen. Well, then you haven't been to Charles Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. Nobody has their selection. Nobody has their discounts. And every week there's something new. If you need office furniture, Larrick's Warehouse Outlet can sell it to you for half the price and below manufacturer's selected prices. Half price and below on hundreds of items. Selection from budget to the best. Really, desks from $50 to $5,000. Filing cabinets from $25 to $500. Before you go anywhere else, do yourself a favor and come to Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. With 25,000 square feet of selection, you're not going to go anywhere else. Larrick's Warehouse Outlet at 23 McOil Avenue, Dayton. Open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Larrick's, continuing the tradition.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents.
And Doug.
Don't you just love the smell of old books? Shh, this is a library. Sorry, ma'am. We're looking for a book titled Liberty Mutual Customizes Your Car Insurance so you only pay for what you need. I don't think we carry that, but check nonfiction. It really does devour literature. Please leave. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Whether you're vaccinated or not, it's important to know the symptoms of COVID and its variants. Fever is the leading sign of COVID and the flu, so make sure you use an accurate thermometer. Only the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer has been proven accurate, with more than 100 clinical studies. Non-contact thermometers have no clinical evidence behind them, and you cannot rely on them. Be vigilant and seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Audible is best-selling audiobooks, exclusive originals, and podcasts all in one app. This holiday season, treat yourself with 60% off your first 3 months. Just visit audible.com for more details.
Some people think fall is the best time of the year. It may also be a great time to consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
Take home Fricker's Holiday Feast. Frickin' yum, 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 yum. yum. Our gift cards always please frickin' yum, 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 yum.
Take home 4 pounds of frickin' chicken chunks for only $29.99, carry out only. Buy a $25 Frickers gift card and you'll get 5 frickin' bonus bucks free. The ho, ho, ho for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Frickers.
Frickin' yum, yum.
Gather near and bring the cheer this holiday season. Dazzle and delight the love of your life with a gift from Hellsberg Diamonds. Don't miss great prices on stunning diamond studs, tennis bracelets, gemstone rings, and the year's must-have look, gold jewelry for stacking and layering. Another reason to go to Hellsberg? Get a free Microsoft Surface Laptop Go with a purchase of $1,699 or more. Visit Hellsberg.com or a store near you today. Limited time offer while supplies last. See online or in-store for details.
The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Presented by Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
We spend so much time talking about the college football playoff. We talk about all the different scenarios. We talk about what happens if this team beats this team, or what if this team wins but they win only by 3, and what if this team loses but they get blown out? You could lose, you can't get blown out. What if and every time it never fails, it always works itself out. And I'm excited to bring on our next guest, of course, ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz, hanging out with us here today on a Wednesday. Jason, how are you, sir? Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. And you're right. It always works itself out. I just hate that because I feel like the committee always gets bailed out by the fact that college football takes care of college football. Like, just once I want to be really stuck in a situation where they have to make a real and incredibly tough decision between the 4th and 5th best teams in the country, and it has so much consequence. Like, I want them to have that level of ownership. It just never happens. College football takes care of itself.
Yeah, and I beyond agree with you, because I've been saying that, like, yesterday, after Selection Sunday, started the show, and I said, well, I thought yesterday's show was going to be a little bit more interesting just because I thought we were going to be outraged by something. But no, there was nothing to be outraged by. Every team that won, it set up the perfect domino effect, and that's really the situation almost every year. And you're right. I so badly wanted Oklahoma State to blow out Baylor so that we can just stare at the screen and wonder, all right, is the committee going to do it? Are they going to keep the Bearcats out? And that was not the case. I'm happy for the Bearcats that they made it, but I'm not going to lie. There was a little part of me that was pulling for chaos, Jason. I kind of wanted Oklahoma State to win big so we could all be gathered around the set wondering, oh my gosh, are they really going to keep the Bearcats out? Or are you really going to keep an Oklahoma State Big 12 champ out that just beat 2 back-to-back top 10 teams in back-to-back weeks? I was pulling for that scenario right there, and they got bailed out. That's the perfect way to explain it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think we could have a better sense of where the committee actually stands with the group of 5 if that had happened. Because as much as we want to say, hey, the first group of 5 team is in, that doesn't mean the system isn't still broken in some ways, and that doesn't mean that in some ways they can't always sort of hide behind that year was such a different year in the college football lexicon, right? So, like, I keep thinking about it would have been, I think, a better statement for the group of 5 if they had still taken Cincinnati above and beyond Oklahoma State. Then you'd say, all right, the committee has told us something. Instead, it's like, the committee just sort of got a soft and easy decision. The other thing, too, is that, like, I think we've sort of buried the fact that Notre Dame would have been in a much different position for once in their lives if they were in a conference. If Notre Dame was in the ACC, they would have been playing last weekend in an ACC championship game against a 16th ranked Wake Forest with the chance to get one more big win. That could have been huge for them. So we always talk about why there's never a real need for them to join a conference. I'm looking at this last weekend as an obvious need.
No, it's funny, because I remember that was the big thing about last year when they made it, because I said, like, I'm one of those, I wish they'd get in a conference. I know Mike Golick Jr. hates when, every time we have him on and I bring that up because I'm sure he just rolls his eyes because I'm sure he gets met with that all the time. But I do want them in a conference, and they've always, the second they made the playoff without being in a conference or winning a conference championship, I said, well, that does it. There'll never be an incentive to join a conference now if you're Notre Dame, because the committee has already said you don't need to play in a conference championship game to make the playoff. Then when they got, they were kind of adopted last year by the ACC for 1 year. They played in the ACC title game. They got blown out in the ACC title game and still made the college football playoff. So I thought the irony in that situation was pretty cool.
Well, and Mike always talks about they're not going to join a conference because there's not a real need for them to. They're making all sorts of money and they control so much of their destiny. That's why I think it's important to take the time to note that this weekend, because how many times can that happen even as we continue the playoff conversation? How many times can Notre Dame be sitting there not playing on champ weekend and get surpassed by other teams before eventually they'll say, man, the college football world might be sending us a message. I mean, if the college football world ever had the you-know-whats to do that, I think it'd be amazing.
Real quick to close out the conversation about the Bearcats getting in here, Kirk Herbstreit stirred up, I love a good little Twitter beef. I mean, I'm all about that on Twitter. I love that. It's the only reason I have Twitter is just to not make people happy, but to make people upset, apparently. But Kirk Herbstreit says after 7 years, he tweeted this out less than 24 hours ago. Kirk Herbstreit says after 7 years of bitching and complaining from a vocal minority that the college football playoff system is rigged and that the small guy will never get a chance, haven't heard much from you the last couple of days. Everything okay? What's the next conspiracy theory? Can't wait. Because that one is history. I disagree with him wholeheartedly because of what we talked about to open up the conversation. I don't think that put to rest that narrative because, again, the perfect storm, every domino that needed to fall into place fell into place. It was an easy decision to put the Bearcats in. It wasn't what we thought was going to be a tough decision at all.
Yeah, and I guess I would ask who Herbie's listening to, because I think a lot of Cincinnati fans and a lot of Group of Five fans have been very aware of that. Like, I've still heard plenty of people coming back and saying, hey, that doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory and the world's okay. Like, I mean, we went all the way into the selection show still saying, if there's a chance to leave this team out, the committee will find a way. So, I don't think that conspiracy theory, if that's what Kirk wants to call it, I don't think that's dead anywhere, and it's going to be right back next year. And frankly, what I'm going to laugh at is when Cincinnati's part of the Big 12 and no longer cares about it one way or the other.
Yep.
Like, there's still going to be big Group of Five teams that are going to be turned. Like, that's the other part of this we haven't talked enough about. Like, Cincinnati is poised as a program to walk into the Big 12 as a perennial favorite, and then they won't have this conversation at all. Like, every year is like Cincinnati as a program has a chance to really make their mark and suddenly become the team in the Big 12, which I think is pretty stunning.
ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz with us here on the Justin Kinder Show with Kev Nash. Mine is Kev Nash today. He'll be back on tomorrow's show. But Jason, let's shift our attention to, of course, the four teams that did make the playoff. You have Alabama against Cincinnati, and then you have Michigan and Georgia. Two really interesting, one really, really good matchup. I love the Georgia-Michigan matchup. I think that's going to be one hell of a game. I think Alabama-Cincinnati is one hell of a storyline. It's the David versus Goliath. I know in March Madness college basketball, we tune into that big postseason tournament for chaos, for upsets, for the little guy to be, to put down the big guy. Is there a chance for that here? Are we going to see Cincinnati shock the world, or is their Cinderella story just getting to the playoff?
I think the Cinderella story is partially getting to the playoffs. I will say this, though. Anybody that says that they can't be competitive at all, like, I don't know where that's coming from. Like, you look at strength on strength, like the Alabama wide receivers obviously are very good. But last time I checked, the Cincinnati secondary is also very good. There are guys that will be playing on Sundays on both sides of the ball there. So, like, I think that's a really interesting matchup. I think I would not be surprised to see Alabama struggle to move the football a little bit in this one because of the way the matchup plays out. So I like Cincinnati a lot. I don't think this, to me, feels like one of those games that Cincinnati's within striking distance for the first three quarters, and we all feel like it's hopeful. And then we wake up at the end of the fourth quarter and we say, man, how did it get to that point? Like that it feels to me like that sort of a game. Cincinnati's competitive, though. The other side of it, on Michigan, Georgia, I mean, you're talking about a Michigan team that we all know can run the football on anybody and has been really physical against a Georgia team that just got manhandled last weekend in a way that is going to be hard to forget. So, I can't get it out of my head watching Jordan Davis, just the great defensive lineman for Georgia, just standing around a couple of times. Like, he was out of gas. He had nothing left. And so Alabama ran tempo. The question is, that's not really Michigan's style. So stylistically, is Michigan the right matchup to be able to do that against this Georgia defense? Like, I think we've soured a little too far on who the Georgia defense is because of what Alabama did to them. Look, they got out-coached, they got outsmarted, and they got outplayed, but that doesn't mean that they're a bad football team. So that's a really interesting matchup to me.
Coaches taking other jobs, players already entering the transfer portal. You have offense, defensive coordinators, position coaches already bailing on teams and taking other jobs. That's all happening while you have a group of people trying to convince everybody that these bowl games mean something. And I know they mean something to some certain people. There's fan bases of teams who will never be viewed as true college football playoff contenders. So a chance to go up against bigger teams. This is their spotlight, but there's not enough of those storylines to push the narrative that these bowl games matter, at least for me. I'm curious your thoughts. These bowl game matchups are interesting, but how do you view bowl games? And it's not the fault of the players or the teams, but how do you view bowl games, especially with so many things happening, signifying that, yeah, these games don't matter. Players are leaving, coaches, players sitting out, players entering transfer portals, coaches taking other jobs, coaches leaving. How do you view bowl games, with that big debate?
I think this year the New Year's Six has given us some games that are interesting because of the brands that we don't see play very often. And there can be some fun things there, but realistically, the rest of the bowl games, you're 1,000% right. For a lot of schools, it's the extra practices you get. It's a chance to play other schools that you don't usually play. It's a chance for a lot of kids to get the experience to go to cities they've never been to, may never get to go to. So there's value to all of that. But to me, the rest of the bowl season is a lot like what's been happening in the NBA this year. Like, we forget that the Celtics and the Lakers played last night because nobody gives a damn right now. Like, it matters to NBA diehards, but NBA diehards, like the casual NBA fan, starts really paying attention, as we all know, right around December, right? So right around Christmas. So, and then it gets really good during the playoffs. Like, the rest of the bowl games are essentially regular season basketball games between Phoenix and Utah. You're not watching it unless somebody tells you have to watch it. And then you'll tune in and be like, oh, that was better than I expected. And that's okay. Like, everybody's making money and the ratings are still better than they would be for, nobody's going to watch a cornhole championship. So it fills time. It's fine, but it's not moving my soul to sit down and watch the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, and I didn't know Utah had so many passionate fans, by the way. But look, a very interesting fan base. If they let some no-name radio boob from Dayton, Ohio, get them outraged on social media, I have no clue what to even think of that. By the way, I'm public. One guy told me I need to go into what he said. I need to go into witness protection when Utah beats Ohio State. And I was like, I don't know if that's a threat or not. I mean, these people are angry at me because I could see why it's viewed as a little arrogant. But I said, hey, I don't like that the old traditional rules of the Rose Bowl take the Pac-10 and the Big Ten or the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and pair them together. I'm like, when you have these bowl games that in essence don't mean as much because if you're not in the playoff, it doesn't matter. I hate that they have these conference tie-ins. I'm all about give us the biggest brands going up against one another to create as much interest as possible because that's what the goal is of this, especially when you have so many people not willing to watch because they're not in the playoff. So I tweeted out, Jason, that, man, I hate that tradition leaves us with Ohio State going up against Utah, who is really good, by the way. I know Utah's good, and I know the game will probably be good, but Ohio State, Utah just doesn't kind of roll off the tongue. It doesn't sound great, right? So that's what I was tweeting. I got destroyed, and I am curious, how do you view the Ohio State-Utah matchup? I know on the field it's going to be good, but the brand, like, what I would have rather seen Notre Dame, Ohio State. I would have rather seen Ohio State, Clemson, just because they've developed that rivalry over the years with Dabo and Ryan Day and everything. I can't believe that I tweeted out something like that. There's things, Jason, I tweet out that I know I'm going to tick people off with. This one, I had no intentions of it, and I'm public enemy number one.
Yeah, well, and look, I mean, college football diehards that watch this year a lot. I think Utah, a really physical team, overcame a lot of tragedy. There's so many good storylines with Utah, and they're playing lights out right now. The thought of the Ohio State-Utah game as a game, I'm really excited about. But to your point, like, what's the point of the bowls? I think I've always been surprised that they didn't just have a basic lottery system. And after we get through the New Year's Six, or after we get through the college football playoff, I should say, then the rest of it's all slotted from a lottery system, and each bowl gets their first choice of matchups. And you just go down the line. Like, I think to that point, having really interesting bowl games is the fact is it's not for guys like me that are going to watch college football no matter what. It's for people like I grew up around, and I grew up being one of that. Remember waking up on New Year's Day and saying, oh my God, I can't wait to watch this random bowl game because these two random teams are playing in it that I know, matter so much. So yes, if there was a Notre Dame, Ohio State Rose Bowl, it would get better ratings because it'd be Notre Dame, Ohio State. So, I think the Bulls should probably look at reimagining everything when they get through their playoff expansion, whenever that is, and trying to figure out a way to make sure that Bulls ultimately are the best they can be, no matter where the affiliation is. Like, I just think the affiliation thing in general in today's world is really a dated concept, because now you can watch every conference, every game, everywhere. It's not what it was 25, 30 years ago when it mattered, because you were never going to see the Pac-12 play the Big Ten, or at the time the Pac-10, right? Like, so I think it's an old school thinking around something that needs to market to new school.
Here's an idea. Let the fans, for particular bowl games, have a couple matchups that you let the fans vote on the matchup. I know that sounds kind of corny a little bit, but you know what I mean? It gets fans involved. It gets people talking about the bowl games instead of just saying, here's who you're playing, which is not bad. Some of these matchups are really good, actually. But I mean, I would love a situation where the fans get to go vote on what matchups they would love to see, or I'm sure there's a way to organize that. But I mean, they would at least get the fans involved. But honestly, I don't think they have the intention of doing that. They're going to pair teams up. People are going to watch. They're going to get their sponsorship money. And really, that's the purpose of these big picture at the end of the day.
Well, and all of this is going to be made moot when there's college football playoff expansion, because these bowls are going to be fighting. I mean, let's not get it twisted. The Rose Bowl cares way more about being part of whatever the expanded college football playoff is than they care about their allegiances in the past. So, whatever that looks like, if we go to 12 teams, the real fight, the real conversation is how many of these bowls that right now, put a lot of money into marketing themselves as a bowl and tell you how important bowl games are going to abandon all of that just to be part of the college football playoff, even if it means they're a first-round game or a second-round game, however that all plays out. Like, all of these things, suddenly, whatever, the Frosted Flakes Tony the Tiger Bowl is going to take on a much different meaning when they're actually trying to suddenly bid to be a semifinal game.
All right, ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz, good enough to hang out with us here today. And Jason, I appreciate you taking time and moving the interview to today and everything along those lines. But now what do we do? We spend so much time talking about the upcoming college football season, the upcoming college football play, and now it's here, and now we just sit here and wait a month. I hate that we have to wait so long for these matchups.
Yeah, that's one thing about expansion that I think would be really nice, is just the opportunity to keep feeding the beast, right? Like, because as much as I've talked to a bunch of people that are like, oh, now we have a few weeks to watch college basketball. It's like, nobody's putting their head there yet, right? So, and I've been asked to do that at ESPN a bunch already because we're getting ready for a lot of work there. And it's like, guys, let's just get through the college football final first, like, give me a champion. And then I'll start worrying about, whether Butler or Villanova is better. Who cares today? So, yeah, we're all going to be stretching right now. And then we're going to be watching a bunch of NFL yelling and screaming about thank God it's a tight race in the AFC.
All right. ESPN Radio's Jason Fitz. Jason, thanks so much as always, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, my friend.
All right, Jason Fitz, good enough to talk about, the fallout from, of course, the college football playoff selection. Of course, Ohio State and Utah in the Rose Bowl. You have Notre Dame, of course, not in the playoff. They just missed. That's a good point by Jason, too, saying, we talk so much about how people push Notre Dame to get into a conference and that they shouldn't make the playoff if they're not in a conference. But this is the first time since the college football playoff started that you can literally pinpoint at a Notre Dame scenario that resulted in them not making the playoff because they did not play in a conference championship. Because had they played Wake Forest and they beat Wake Forest and they were ACC champions and they have one loss, I still think it would have made the committee's decision semi-difficult. It's easy. The easy way out is, Cincinnati's undefeated and they won the head-to-head. Well, that's one of the factors of how you decide who gets in the playoff. All right. So, yes, the fact that they beat Notre Dame would have made it, okay, I think Cincinnati gets the edge here, but also you look at the big body of work, the strength of schedule. I mean, the fact that Notre Dame played way more tougher teams than Cincinnati, the fact that they won a conference championship. Yes, even if it is a weak ACC is still better than an American conference, as far as I'm concerned. So that's really kind of how I view it big picture. But yes, we brought up Kirk Herbstreit, Centerville's own. By the way, I love petty Kirk Herbstreit. Too many times you get guys like Kirk who they have to be buttoned up and they have to say all the right things and they don't, they don't really stir things up. That's sports radio. That's kind of the role of the sports radio host. Kirk Herbstreit doesn't have a position at ESPN to be the guy that stirs the pot, right? Well, Kirk Herbstreit went full WWE heel mode and tweeted this out. We talked about it with Jason Fitz, but he said after 7 years of bitching and complaining from a vocal minority that the college football playoff system is rigged, the small guy will never get a chance. Well, he hasn't heard from those people. It's getting pretty quiet. He goes on to say, what's your next conspiracy theory? Can't wait, because this one is history. First of all, I love a good troll job. I love when guys kind of poke the bear a little bit. I mean, I don't think, for those of you who know me, I kind of thrive in that. I have no clue why. I would rather have thousands and hundreds or thousands of people saying how much they can't stand my take on something than to have everyone agree with me. Have everyone agreeing is boring to me. I like chaos. Kirk Herbstreit's usually the everyone agreeing, everyone singing Kumbaya. Let's all hold hands and sing songs and, go campfires and tell everyone our favorite color and our favorite, camp time story. Not making fun of Kirk Herbstreit. That's just his role at ESPN, right? Like, he doesn't have a position to really kind of stir the pot. I love that he doubled down on this. I love that he is basically saying, for all of you whiny American Conference people, for all of you whiny Bearcat fans, for all of you whiny UCF fans who had a championship parade, even though you didn't win a championship, you had a fake participation trophy championship. The Bearcats probably would have had a fake, we are the champions, even though you're not parade. I'm sure they would have done the same thing if they were kept out of the college football playoff. But at the end of the day, I love that Kirk Herbstreit's going at them, even though I disagree with him, because I think that theory it will still exist moving forward. Cincinnati was the Bearcats. That was the committee's get out of jail free card. That was the committee's get out of jail free card. They didn't have to force the Bearcats in. They didn't have to make an exception for the Bearcats. They didn't have to sit back and say, Oklahoma State, I know you beat 2 top 10 teams the last 2 weeks. I know you blew 2 top 10 teams out, and you're a Big 10 or you're a Big 12 champion. It's a bigger conference than the American. Sure, you have one loss, but you played better teams, so you're more likely to have a loss than an undefeated Bearcat team who plays literally JV teams on a week in, week out basis. I think we're going to have to put Oklahoma State in over the Bearcats. That scenario did not present itself, and it should have. Do you realize how much had to go right for the Bearcats to make the playoff? Ohio State had to lose twice for the Bearcats to make it. Clemson, who has been one of the faces of the playoff, as much as I love Ohio State, I am not going to be a homer here. The face of the college football playoff is Alabama and Clemson. Those have been the 2 most storied programs in the history of the college football playoff. They're the only team that has won those are the only 2 teams that have won multiple championships in the college football playoff era. Alabama's only missed the playoff once. Clemson's only missed it twice or 3 times now with this upcoming season. But they are a regular. They live in the playoff. They live in the championship game. They have dominated the great storylines. Trevor Lawrence having to replace Kelly Bryant a couple games into the season because Kelly Bryant led an undefeated Clemson team to the college football playoff. They lost in the playoff, but then they pick up the very next season and they're undefeated. They had a top 10 win. And Dabo Swinney said, you know what, Kelly Bryant, I appreciate everything you've done for us. You got us here. But we need him to take us to the finish line because we don't want to get back to the playoff just to get beat again. And that's what will happen with Kelly Bryant. So they went to a true star freshman quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who goes on to win a national championship and blew out Alabama in the process. Clemson was dominant there. Then Clemson goes on to get to every playoff of Trevor Lawrence's career. They blew out Alabama. And then they got blew out by Alabama in a repeat game not too long after that. Then they got to the title game again against LSU and Joe Burrow. Trevor Lawrence suffered a loss, only had 2 losses? It took a former Buckeye quarterback to beat him and the current quarterback in Justin Fields at Ohio State, at the time the current quarterback to beat him. The Clemson Tigers have been the story of all stories in the college football playoff. Alabama's complete dominance within the playoff has made them the face of the playoff. Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence. You think you're cool? You think being a true freshman quarterback leading a team to a national championship and destroying Alabama? We'll raise that. We'll go to a freshman quarterback at halftime of the national championship game to lead us to the promised land, and that's what they did. Those two have been great. Now, Ohio State's 2014 run, that was magical as well. A third-string quarterback. Braxton goes down to start the year. JT takes over. They have an early season loss. They redeem it, dominate, drop 50 almost every single week. JT Barrett goes down against Michigan in the final game of the regular season, and then in comes Cordell Jones, a third-string quarterback. The Buckeyes have no chance. They have a tough Wisconsin team in the Big Ten championship game. They shut them out. They put 50 up on them, and they make it into the college football playoff. They're trailing double digits to Alabama and Nick Saban, right? They come back and they win. They blew out Alabama. They just threw the ball all over Alabama. Zeke Elliott was running all over them. And then they go on to beat Marcus Mariota and Oregon in the national championship game. Another great story. But that's really the only time Ohio State was relevant in the national championship scene, because they made the playoff. They missed the playoff the next year. They got beat 2 years after their title game against Clemson in that 31-0 game. They got destroyed there. They were known for, losing to Purdue. So Ohio State's right there in the mix of things. But honestly, Clemson and Alabama, it's been all about them. But think about how much had to go wrong for Cincinnati to get it right. Cincinnati made the playoff because one of the faces of the playoff finally had a down year in the Clemson Tigers post Trevor Lawrence. So Clemson had to be out of it. Oklahoma and the Big 12 had to be out of it. Ohio State had to be out of it. Notre Dame, luckily they took care of business against Notre Dame, but Notre Dame had to suffer. They had to beat Notre Dame to get there. Do you realize how much had to go right? You had to have an entire Pac-12 conference be irrelevant for you to make it. You had to have the entire Big 12 conference be irrelevant for you to make it. All right, there's so many teams that had to have non-traditional bad years for the Bearcats to make it. So for Kirk Herbstreit to sit here and say, after 7 years of bitching and complaining from a vocal minority that the system is rigged, I'm not hearing much from you. Crickets. What's your next conspiracy theory? This isn't a conspiracy theory. The little guy, everyone keeps saying, they're holding the little guy down. The little guy's not being held down. The little guy is not equipped to get to this level. Look at how much had to go right for the Bearcats to make it. And stop saying, Kenner, you're just you're rain on their parade and blah. No. What am I saying that's wrong? What if Clemson would have only lost to Georgia and then won out the rest of the way? Do you think that Cincinnati would have made it over Clemson? So how am I raining on their parade by saying that, they're lucky that Clemson was down this year? Well, you could say that about a lot of teams. No, you can really just say that about Clemson more time. Clemson has been a mainstay in the playoff. Dabo Swinney and Clemson have been the second most dominant program in the history of the college football playoff. I am not stretching that angle by saying, look, it took Clemson being out of it for you to make it. That's the truth. Clemson, no one anticipated Clemson not making the playoff or being a 3-loss team. It took that for you to have a chance. If Clemson was a 1-loss ACC champion, they're in over the Bearcats. They're your number 4 team. You would have Alabama. You would have Michigan at 2. You would have, of course, Georgia at 3 and Clemson at 4. And there would be no questions asked. Do you think anybody out there outside of the fans who clamor for the small guy and the Bearcat fans, do you think anyone out there would have actually defended the Bearcats? No, because that would have been the right thing to do. Because Clemson, even in a weak ACC conference, those weak ACC opponents are still way better than the American Conference teams. It's common sense. I am not here to water down the success of the Bearcats. You just heard Jason Fitz say the exact same thing, but because it's me saying it, you're going to get angry. The Bearcats need to send a lot of thank you cards to a lot of programs, a lot of coaches, a lot of teams. They did their part. I'm not watering down what they did. They did what they were supposed to. They went undefeated. They beat the Notre Dames of the world. They beat Indiana. But that's not why they made the playoff. That's why they were in the playoff conversation. They made the playoff because Clemson was no good. They made the playoff because Oklahoma was no good. By the way, Oklahoma's a regular in the playoff. What if Oklahoma what if Spencer Rattler would have lived up to the Heisman conversation and Oklahoma was, a Big 12 champion? Oklahoma would have been in the playoff. The committee would have had to have decided at 4 if Clemson was their typical Clemson selves and Oklahoma was their typical Oklahoma selves. And by the way, don't get angry at me for saying that. Nobody anticipated that being the case. Everyone thought those were going to be 2 of the top 4 teams in it, and they weren't. That was a surprise to many. You could say you're not surprised. You're fooling yourself. It took Oklahoma in the Big 12 being irrelevant. It took Clemson in the ACC being irrelevant. It took a lot. It took a lot. And the committee got bailed out. And Kirk Herbstreit, I know what he's trying to say. Oh, be quiet. Cincinnati got in. Stop saying it's rigged against the small guy. It's not rigged against the small guy, but it's not built for the small guy either. And unless you are a team that can continuously count on top-tier programs having down years, if the blueprint to get to the playoff is Clemson being bad, Oklahoma being bad, the Pac-12 being completely irrelevant, if you need 3 Power 5 conferences to be irrelevant for you to have a shot, that's not a game plan. That's hope. That's luck. And luck and hope are not game plans. I have this conversation and debate with Kevin all the time about the quality of quarterbacks that you could win Super Bowls with. You know, you could win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. You can get to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. You could win a Super Bowl with Joe freaking Flacco. But nobody in their right mind is out there in the draft room saying, we don't need a Patrick Mahomes. We need a Nick Foles. We don't need we don't need a Tom Brady. We just need a Jared Goff to get there. Oh, we don't, you know what I mean? Like, you see what I'm saying here? Like, sure, it can be done. You can win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. You can get to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. You can win a Super Bowl with Nick freaking Foles, right? You could do that. But you could win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. You could win Super Bowls with average quarterbacks. But is anyone out there saying, we don't need an elite quarterback? We need average. Because look, average quarterbacks have gotten to the Super Bowl before. That's all we need. We just need average. Forgetting the fact that Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl because of the defense, right? Forgetting the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo gets to the Super Bowl because of their defense, right? Like, we forget the fact that the reason these average quarterbacks have been able to succeed the way that they do is not because of what they brought to the table. It's because of what the team's strength was, which was the defense. But we forget about that. We water down the narrative. We say, look, Nick Foles is good enough to win you a Super Bowl. Yeah, kind of, but look what all had to go right for that to happen. You know, not as much has to go right for Tom Brady to win a Super Bowl. Why? Because that's the caliber of quarterback you're striving to get. No one is striving to get Nick Foles. No one is striving to get Joe Flacco. No one is striving to get Jimmy Garoppolo. You can try and convince yourself that you're capable of winning a Super Bowl or getting to a Super Bowl with those guys, but how come teams are not sitting there on draft day trading multiple first-round picks to trade up to get a bum quarterback? It doesn't happen. But Justin, you could win Super Bowls with Nick Foles. You just need to find the Nick Foles of the NFL draft and you'll be fine. No. Yes, you're capable of winning a Super Bowl or getting to a Super Bowl with those guys. It doesn't mean that that's the blueprint to win one. And that's where I'm at with the Bearcats here. Congratulations. It's a great story, but it's not as if what you did to get to the college football playoff can be replicated. Like, UCF isn't sitting there saying, man, what could we have done different to make the playoff? We should have did what Cincinnati did. Well, what did Cincinnati do that you didn't? Cincinnati went undefeated and won the American Conference Championship. The same thing that UCF did. What could UCF have done different? Nothing. The only thing that could have gone different for UCF would have been for 3 of the Power 5 conferences to not have a representative in the playoff. That's what happened. So the Bearcats didn't break the mold. The Bearcats didn't do something. They made history, but the Bearcats didn't start a trend. Do you think there's going to be other American Conference teams? Do you think Houston's going to be like, okay, now we know how to get to the playoff. Now we just need to do exactly what Cincinnati did. Okay, fine. Houston, go undefeated next year. Beat a Power 5 program, live off of that to the end, and then you're in? No. Houston would have to rely on the Pac-12 continuing to be irrelevant. They would have to continue on the Big 12 to be irrelevant. They would have to continue to rely on the ACC and Clemson to be bad. Like, do you see what I mean? I'm not being a hater. I'm being a realist. And how you can listen to everything I just said and actually think that you have a counterpoint that's going to change my mind or make you right. I don't care how arrogant it sounds. It's not. People get mad at reality. And the reality is Cincinnati they did what they were supposed to be in the playoff conversation. They didn't do anything to actually get to the playoff. They needed Clemson and the ACC to be bad. They needed the Pac-12 to continue to be irrelevant. They needed Spencer Rattler to end up being a bust and to have to transfer out, and for the Big 12 to have absolutely nobody to compete for the playoff. That's what they needed. And to be honest, they needed Oklahoma State to lose, and that's what happened. So I agree. I love what Kirk Herbstreit's saying, but I disagree with them. That's not going to put to rest that narrative, because the easy narrative is that the big bad bully's always out to get the small guy, when really sometimes the small guy is just not good enough. Folks, I am 5'5". I loved basketball. I wanted to play basketball at the highest of levels, but you know what? Ain't a whole lot of hope for me, right? Like, I worked harder than everybody on all of my team. That's not a shot at it, but I worked way harder than anybody else that I ever played basketball with growing up. But you know what? There is a ceiling for little guys like me. There's a ceiling for the Bearcats. I was never going to be a starter at high school basketball. You know how I would have become a starter in high school basketball? If the 5 best players on the team, their car broke down on the way to the game, and 2 other players got COVID. That's the only way I would be a starter in basketball. You know, it's not like if I got to be the starter that day that I can go home and say, man, I'm a starting guard for basketball. How cool is that, guys? Look at me. No. Kind of forgetting the fact that it took 5 guys their car breaking down on the way to the game, and it took 2 guys getting sick to miss the game for me to become a starter. That's the Bearcats. You work hard. You do everything you're supposed to, just like me. I went to every practice. I went to every off-season conditioning. I did everything I was supposed to. It didn't mean that I was guaranteed to play. I sucked. I'm not denying that. I'm admitting it. I sucked, but I worked my ass off. Cincinnati doesn't suck, but they work their ass off. They do everything that they're supposed to, but sometimes you got to do what you're supposed to. You got to work hard, and then you got to sit there and hope that enough chaos happens around you for life to be complete. And they had that. I know, I'm mean. I'm a bully. I'm here raining on Cincinnati's parade. I would love if they beat Alabama. It'd be a great story. But I said nothing wrong. It's true. That's not an opinion. It's not that Kinner's opinion is that it took Clemson being out for them to get in. That is a fact. Cincinnati was not going to make it over a 1-loss ACC champion Clemson team. It's a fact. The other fact is that if Oklahoma was a 1-loss Big 12 champion, Cincinnati wasn't making it in over them either. Not an opinion. That's a fact. It is what it is. Hour 3 next.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
Fever is a potential sign of COVID or the flu, and the Exergen temporal scanner thermometer has been proven accurate with more than 100 clinical studies. Be vigilant and seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Be accurate with Exergen. Exergen temporal scanners, available at Walmart and other fine retailers. Learn more at Exergen.com. That's EXERGEN.com. Exergen is changing the way the world takes temperature.
WYNG 1410 Dayton, Dayton's ESPN Radio.
Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
If you need new roofing, siding, or gutters, skylights, or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner or business and need someone you can trust, don't take a chance. Enhance with Lance. Lance Roofing and Siding in Fairborn has been satisfying customers since 1993 and hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Lance Roofing and Siding, 8460 Dayton Springfield Road in Fairborn. Call for a free estimate at 864-2722. That's 864-2722 or online at lanceroofing.com.
Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street are huge supporters of the Dayton Flyers. Whether you're one of the 13,000 fans cheering on the Flyers at UD Arena or one of the hundreds of fans packed inside Tim's on game day, there is only 2 places that you can feel the passion of the Flyer faithful more than anywhere else. Timothy's Bar and Grill is also a sponsor of the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash in the afternoons and the Talking Out Loud Hour on Thursday nights with Sully. Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. Go Flyers.
Germain Honda, Beaver Creek is your local Honda dealer. For a limited time, get 0% financing on the 21 Passport, the 22 Pilot, and HRV, or 1.9% for 48 months on the 22 Odyssey. Lease a 22 HRV Sport for as little as $229 a month, or a CRV Hybrid EX for as little as $279 a month. See me, Sales Manager Jason High, for all the details. We are located on Route 35, just east of 675 between Xenia and Beaver Creek. Germain Honda, Beaver Creek, the right car, the right price, the right way. I hope to see you soon.
Need a U.S. passport? We can help. Hi, this is Mike Foley, your Montgomery County Clerk of Courts. Visit one of our convenient auto title locations in Huber Heights, Clayton, downtown, Moraine, and Centerville. Make us your first destination before you travel abroad. No appointments ever needed. We do passports.com for more info.
Cordell Transportation is now hiring Class A CDL drivers. $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, $5,000 sign-on bonus. Home daily dedicated lanes, no touch freight. Apply today at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time.
My go-to order at Skyline has always been a regular 3-way and cheese coney. But today, I made the switch to 5-way. Those hearty beans and diced onions took it to another level. From now on, I'm a Skyline 5-way guy.
Together, at last it's Skyline time.
My son is not some statistic.
My daughter's not a headline. My girl, she's not someone's agenda.
What she
is
irreplaceable.
COVID hospitalizations of young people have tripled since the start of summer. So I talked to my daughter's doctor about COVID vaccines.
She said they're highly effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths, even from the Delta variant.
We can do this. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
At Napa, when it comes to serving you, their motor never quits. From next day delivery and curbside pickup to getting involved with local communities, that's Napa know-how.
He's a former Buckeyes great and now a college football Hall of Famer. And don't forget about his 13 years of NFL experience playing for the Eagles, Dolphins, Jets, and the New England Patriots. He's Dayton's own Keith Byers. Hang out with him every Monday at noon on the Keith Byers Show, presented by Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I need everyone to do me a favor. Go to Twitter. If you follow Keith Byers on Twitter, super. If you don't, search Keith Byers on Twitter, KAB41. Okay. Last night, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. How cool is that? Keith has waited so long to finally hear his name be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I was so happy for him back in early 2000 when he found out, or 2020, when he found out about it. And then, of course, COVID happened, and I was worried that, man, they're going to have some watered-down, Zoom presentation, right? And he waited it out. There was no presentation last year. He was kind of the 2020 class and the 2021 class all were presented together, but he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame class last night. He gave his speech and everything. Really cool. We all sent him a congratulations earlier today, but we need more. He's not just a former Buckeye great. He's a Dayton great, and it's really cool seeing the success that he had, of course, in his playing days, but now being recognized for all of it. So make sure you head to Twitter, find him on Twitter, KAB41, and congratulate him on his induction into the College Football Hall of Fame. He definitely deserves it, and he deserves the love from the Dayton community. KAB41 on Twitter. Go find him. Get there. All right, Justin Kinner back with you here on 1410 ESPN Radio. All right, and cool news today, college basketball. Tonight, Dayton Flyers play at SMU. It's 8 o'clock tip-off, but some other Dayton Flyers / college basketball news. If you want a chance, for what this past season, the TBT, Okay, we do the TBT and WING every year. Every time we have Carmen's Crew and the Red Scare. Carmen's Crew, Ohio State Buckeyes basketball alumni team in the TBT. And we always call those games, Norm Gravy and myself calling the Buckeye games and the Red Scare, the Flyer games, getting a chance to see Kendall Pollard play again, Kyle Davis, guys like that. I mean, how cool has this opportunity been to get to see Trey Landers and Ryan Mikesell play the last couple of seasons? There was a chance for them to be able to win to the championship rounds, to be able to play at UD Arena, and they fell in the second to final game before heading to UD Arena last year against Miami's alumni team, not Ohio, but the Hurricanes, at the Covelli Center in Columbus. And I was like, man, if they can win that game and get to Columbus, or get to UD Arena, that place will be electric. I am really interested to see how packed UD Arena would be if the Dayton Flyers Red Scare team ever had a chance to play at UD Arena. Well, now we're going to get to find out. It was just announced earlier today that UD Arena is going to host the TBT Regional and Championship Weekend in 2022. The press release says that the basketball tournament announced that the University of Dayton will serve as a regional event and the championship weekend location for the 22 tournament. The Dayton alumni team Red Scare will be one of 8 teams competing in the Dayton Regional at UD Arena between July 24th and 27th. Go to DaytonFlyers.com for an opportunity to buy those tickets. I know that seems like it's way off in the distance, and it is, but make sure you jump on that. I think that'd be some cool Christmas presents coming up. A little TBT tickets, TBT action, but to get to see some of your favorite former Flyers in action on the floor at UD Arena, I think that would be pretty dang cool. And I'm really glad that we're going to get a chance to see that. We had a chance this past year, of course, 2 years ago, they had the bubble games, right? Within the bubble. This last year was at the Covelli Center. If they would have won that regional, they would have punched their ticket to the championships at UD Arena. But this year, the regional and the championships will be at UD Arena, and there's a good chance UD can make a run to the championship game. And I'm really curious to see how packed they can get that arena. We know that they fill that up no matter who they're playing for the regular season for college basketball. But for this alumni team, we know that the passion is deep, and I'm really curious to see how full they can make that arena next July. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on 1410 ESPN Radio with Kev Nash. Of course, Kev Nash not here today, though. He'll be back tomorrow. Shout out to our sponsors, Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. He's the newest sponsor of the show. I appreciate Brad, a great friend of mine, and also our realtor. And he just helped my fiance and I get our first house, and we just got to dot some I's and cross some T's. A lot of I's and a lot of T's, but we're getting closer and closer to our move-in date, and that's all thanks to Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Highly recommend him. Reach out to Brad Mays. He's always on the Facebook page. Go and find him and check him out. But does a great job, and I know he'll do a great job for you guys as well. All right, so I want to feed off of something that I touched on lightly before. I was talking about the Bearcats. I'm done talking about the Bearcats, but one of the examples I gave is that the Bearcats making the college football playoff. It's not like, and for everyone out there, like Kirk Herbstreit kind of telling all the Bearcat fans to hush and telling all the small school defenders to hush, because so many people are out there. It's just a TV invitational. It's for the big money brands only. They'll never let an American Conference team or a Group of 5 program in. They'll never do that. Well, Cincinnati made history. They're in the college football playoff. So that kind of debunks that narrative, right? Kirk Herbstreit believes so. He was taking shots at those guys on Twitter saying, hey, where's all those people at? What, you seem awfully quiet. I guess you have nothing to say because, well, that whole conspiracy theory, as he called it, it's debunked, right? I'm kind of ad-libbing a little bit here, but that's the gist of his tweet. He goes on to say, I can't wait to see what your next conspiracy theory is. But here's the deal. Now, that conspiracy theory kind of still exists. The Bearcats didn't make it into the number 4 spot over another proven program. Not going into detail in a long rant like the last part of the show, but do you realize how much had to go right for the Bearcats to get in? The Bearcats did everything that they were supposed to just to be in the playoff conversation. They didn't make the playoff because they went undefeated and beat Notre Dame. They were in the playoff hunt because they went undefeated and beat Notre Dame. They needed Clemson and the ACC to not have a representative. They needed the Big 12 to not have a representative. They needed to have the Pac-12 not have a quality team to compete for the playoff. Do you realize how much had to go right? Clemson, Oklahoma, the entire Pac-12 conference, so much had to go right for them to make the playoff, and they did. But it's not as if the way we talk about it is if, oh man, That's the model. We got to follow that model right there. If we do what the Bearcats did, we can make the playoff. If we go undefeated and we beat a good Power 5 team like Notre Dame, we can make the playoff. Here's the deal. Houston can go, I don't know who they play next year, Houston's non-conference opponent, but let's say that they beat Texas. Let's say they have Texas on the schedule next year. Texas ends up finishing 15th in the country next year. They're back. So they beat Texas next year and they go undefeated. They win the American Conference Championship. Do you think that they're going to make the college football playoff if Clemson returns to form, when Ohio State returns to form out of the Big Ten, or maybe Michigan does it again? I'm not going to give them that, that light of day, but they're Big Ten, Pac-12. If everything falls into place again, if there's no Pac-12, if there's no Big Ten or Big 12, if there is no ACC, then yeah, they'll have a shot. But the likelihood of that happening, especially with Lincoln Riley going to USC now, especially with Utah looking to take that next step and building off the success they had this year, that's unlikely. So there's not a clear-cut blueprint for non-Power 5 schools to get to the playoff. There is a clear-cut blueprint for Power 5s. Like, if you're Ohio State, you can lose one game, don't get blown out, be Big Ten champion, you're in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we know when the Ohio State lost to Michigan that they were out. Still had a small, tiny chance, but we knew they were out. We head into next year knowing, all right, you have Notre Dame to kick off the season. Ohio State can lose to Notre Dame, win the Big Ten championship, and they're in the playoff. It's that simple. It's that simple. Same thing with Clemson. There is a blueprint for those schools to get to the playoff. There is not a blueprint for Cincinnati or any non-Power 5 school to get there. That's not them being bullied. That's just common sense. It's the reality of it. You don't play the level of competition that those teams do. You can go undefeated. You should go undefeated. You're playing bad teams. If you lose to any of those teams, that's a problem. You shouldn't lose to those teams if you're trying to convince us you are one of the big boys. So you beat those teams. You're undefeated. You won your conference championship. You beat Notre Dame. That is why you were in the playoff conversation. Cincinnati can repeat next year. They can go undefeated again next year. They could be AAC champs again next year. But if Clemson's back, if Oklahoma's back, even if Ohio State's back, let's say Ohio State didn't make the didn't win the Big Ten championship, but they have only one loss next year. A one-loss non-Big Ten champion Ohio State team is still getting in over Cincinnati next year. That's just how it's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. It is what it is. It's not moving the goalpost to keep the little guy out. It's just that they don't even have to move the goalpost. Like, you're a non-factor until you become a factor, and a lot of things have to happen for you to be a factor. So I wanted to use that example to transition into this conversation about quarterbacks, because I lightly brought up the quarterback comparison. We have seen, the narrative out there is that you need an elite quarterback to be a good football franchise, right? Like, every time, the Browns are irrelevant forever because they couldn't find their Baker Mayfield. And they have a Baker Mayfield now, and now we're still not satisfied. Now he's still not good enough, and that's a whole other separate conversation. But the point is at times we believe that we can't be, not we the Browns, but we as football fans of the NFL, we believe that we cannot be a good franchise if we don't have an elite quarterback. But the big question I always have is, how many elite quarterbacks really are there? I don't consider Lamar Jackson elite. Don't care what anybody says. To be an elite quarterback, you have to have the ability to throw the football at an elite level, and he can't. He can run the hell out of the ball. He can pass at times. He can make a lot of plays. He's an elite football player, but he's not an elite quarterback, okay? But there's not a whole lot of elite quarterbacks in the NFL. There's Aaron Rodgers, there's Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes. That's it. Those are the only three elite quarterbacks in the NFL. Then there's really, really good quarterbacks. There's your Josh Allens, right? Like that's where your Lamar Jacksons fall into play. That's where your Justin Herberts fall into. Like, really, really good quarterbacks. That's it. Like, there's not a whole lot of elite. So sometimes I feel like a lot of sports franchises' biggest problem, and even in the college level, is you're always like, I know that you were always taught at a young age to aspire to be the best, and you should. But you should aspire to be the best while also having a good balance of self-awareness and common sense. If you are waiting for an Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be waiting for a long time. If you are waiting for a Tom Brady, you got to pick a 6th-round quarterback and just hope that he becomes Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, every year, it's like the lottery. It's the lottery. That's really what it is. We all do this. Man, look at the Powerball, man. That's up to almost $1 billion to $500 million, cajillion dollars. Man, this is going to be my year. I'm going to get a lottery ticket. When I get that lottery ticket, I'm going to pay off student debt. I'm going to pay off the house. I'm going to pay off our cars. And we're going to travel. I'm going to quit my job. And we talk about all of the great things we're going to do when we hit the lottery, right? The problem is, until then, you've convinced yourself that you need that money to live that beautiful, wonderful life. And that if you don't live that beautiful, wonderful life, that your life is not fulfilled and you're not living a good life now. There are times where we have to look at ourselves and say, okay, yes, I want more. I want to make more money. I want a bigger job. I want a family. I want to get married. I want to move out of my mom's basement. I want to do this, right? Like there's a lot of wants. But sometimes you got to look at your situation and say, okay, here's my situation. How do I make the best of it? I believe Tom Brady. I believe Bill Belichick from a coaching perspective. I believe LeBron James and the Michael Jordans of the world. Those guys kill franchises and not in the way that you think. Tom Brady has killed a lot of franchises, not by beating them, not by, like the Dolphins. People think I'm talking about the Dolphins or the teams within the division. No, Tom Brady has killed a lot of teams since arriving in the NFL and the Super Bowl scene because there's so many teams looking for that next Tom Brady that when they don't have that Tom Brady, they think they don't have anything good. That's us in life. We want to win the lottery so that we can get everything in life that we really want. And by convincing ourselves that we really want those things, we have convinced ourselves that what we have now is not good enough. You should always aspire to want more and to accomplish more. But what you should not do is focus so much on what you want to make your life better that you convince yourself that what you have isn't good enough. And that's what teams do in every sport. Michael Jordan has killed so many franchises and even the career of LeBron James. Michael Jordan ruined LeBron James' career. He ruined it. Here's why. Because everyone is looking for that next Michael Jordan. So everything that happens after MJ will be compared to MJ. And there's not going to be another MJ. So if you're not MJ, that means you're no good. We want to win the lottery so we can get everything in life that we want. And if we don't have that mansion, if we don't have that brand new car, okay, if we don't have that beautiful family we want, if we don't have that wife or husband we want, if we don't have that dog we want, if we don't have that yacht that we want, if we don't have that vacation home in Pensacola, if we don't have any of those things, our life is not fulfilled. We don't have a good life because I don't have that vacation home. Oh, our life's not good because I don't have this or I don't have that, or I have a nice car, but it's not the newest version of that car and my life sucks. That's what these teams and legacies and players do. We have a really, really good situation, but because he's not this guy, we're not good enough. We have a really, really good quarterback, but because he is not Aaron Rodgers, we have to keep an eye out on the next better situation out there. Man, I have a really, really good job, but because it's not at this level, it's no good, right? Like we do that to ourselves all the time. So when I look at quarterbacks in the NFL and I look at teams in the NFL, I get so tired about entitled franchises who believe that they deserve an Aaron Rodgers, that they deserve a Tom Brady, that they deserve a Patrick Mahomes. There's a reason Patrick Mahomes is so unique. It's because only one Patrick Mahomes exists. There's not going to be another Patrick Mahomes. I can't think of one quarterback before Patrick Mahomes that is Patrick Mahomes. There's never been a Tom Brady before until Tom Brady happened, and there's never been a Tom Brady after. There was never a Michael Jordan before. There's not a Michael Jordan after. There's never been a LeBron James before. There'll never be another LeBron James after. That's just the reality of it. We have to stop constantly looking at what we have and comparing it to the most elite of the elite and then say, well, until we have that, we don't have what we're looking for. You can't sit there and use that high standard and say that that's who we have to be for us to be happy. The Cleveland Browns have Baker Mayfield. You waited 2 decades to get a quarterback like Baker Mayfield that can actually win you football games. The Browns were a freaking joke. They were a joke. That damn jersey that just had like the tape that they kept putting on the back and they'd cross out. There's like 30 names at quarterback over a 10, 15 year span. That's a joke. That was Cleveland. It was embarrassing. They would get a quarterback. You'd get an old broken down Jake Delhomme. Give me a break. You take a chance on Johnny Manziel, who was a freaking head case and a disaster. You took a chance with him. You lowered your standards because that's what you do. You constantly lower your standards. You constantly take guys that you know aren't going to be good enough, but you do it anyways. So Cleveland finally has what they need to be good. And there's talks of the Browns not bringing him back next year. Who the hell do you think you are, Cleveland? Oh, they need an Aaron Rodgers type quarterback. Every team needs an Aaron Rodgers type quarterback. Of course they need an Aaron Rodgers type quarterback. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, and it doesn't mean that it's even easily accessible. If it was easily accessible to go get an Aaron Rodgers type quarterback, Cleveland would not have been as much of an embarrassment as they were for 2 decades since coming back. The teams that are constantly looking for that Aaron Rodgers, like, by the way, it's not like the Packers knew that they had Aaron Rodgers when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. They drafted Aaron Rodgers and hoped that he would become Aaron Rodgers, right? Right? That's the thing. They draft Jordan Love. They drafted Jordan Love, and they felt like we're the smartest team in the room. This Jordan Love, everyone's giving us crap for drafting Jordan Love, but Jordan Love's the next Aaron Rodgers. And guess what? Jordan Love is not getting a whole lot of love. Not very good. They didn't hit this time because you're not going to hit every time. You can have scouts that think they see something in somebody, but more times than not, you draft, you see something in someone. Like, I think we give way too much credit to scouts at times when a player hits because we only focus on the players that they got that hit, and we don't pay attention to the running list of guys that didn't pan out to what they thought they were going to be, right? That's kind of how Cleveland is with quarterbacks. Who are you to sit here and say, we're going to move on from Baker Mayfield and we'll just get somebody else? Who else you going to get? Who else you going to get? Who are you to think that you can go get somebody else? The Bengals, when they had Andy Dalton, okay? The Bengals, when they had Andy Dalton, they were winning 10-plus games every year, competing for the division every year, making the playoffs every year, 5 straight playoff appearances. And you had a quarterback being booed at celebrity softball tournaments or a celebrity softball game because the all-star game for Major League Baseball was in town. You guys booed him. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is ridiculous. And again, I'm not really bringing that up from too far back, but I'm using that as an example of it is hard to get a elite quarterback in the NFL. And if you're constantly looking for that next elite quarterback, you're never going to be happy with what you have. You're happy with Joe Burrow right now, and you should be. Joe Burrow has a different vibe about him than Andy Dalton did. But I'm also not convinced that Joe Burrow's career is going to be any much different than Andy Dalton. And you can get mad at me for saying that all you want, but I've been calling it from the beginning that Joe Burrow will regress. And guess what's happening, folks? He's regressing. He's not getting better. He's actually getting worse. In fact, his interceptions are going through the roof. His turnovers are going through the roof. It's not good right now. When there's more Joe Burrow, the Bengals are worse. He's regressing. Okay? But you're happy with him for now. But he is the guy. I'm telling you now, Joe Burrow is the guy. I just don't think he's elite. And that's okay. You don't need to have an elite quarterback to win in the NFL. I mean, if you look at the Super Bowls, the last couple of years, actually the last decade, it's actually really interesting. When you look at the last decade alone, here are your quarterback matchups in the Super Bowl. We'll start with 2020, or this past Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl featured the only quarterback matchup that was worthy of saying, oh my God, we're seeing 2 of the best of all time go head to head. We got to see Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady go head to head. That doesn't ever happen in the NFL. It rarely happens. Because here's what we've always had before. You always get 1 elite quarterback in the Super Bowl. You don't get 2. You got Tom Brady and Jared freaking Goff in 2020. In 2018, you got Tom Brady, elite, and Nick Foles. In 2017, Tom Brady against Matt Ryan, better quarterback matchup. Matt Ryan was MVP that year, but Matt Ryan's not like, no one's ever going to look back and say that's an all-time great right there. No. All right. How about old shell of himself, Peyton Manning, going up against Cam Newton? The star power was there, but Peyton Manning was not good. He was not good at that point in his career. How about Tom Brady against Russell Wilson? That matchup sounds sexy now. It wasn't that glamorous in the second year of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was a second-year quarterback that their team identity was known for the Legion of Boom. It was, now if Tom Brady and Russell Wilson met in the Super Bowl, which wouldn't happen because he's with the Buccaneers, but you see my point. If those 2 quarterbacks went head-to-head in the Super Bowl now that's a big deal. It didn't happen. The Seahawks got to the Super Bowl with a second-year quarterback who had numbers that were actually equal to Baker Mayfield. Go look at Russell Wilson's first 2 years in the NFL. Dead even with Baker Mayfield. And we look at Baker Mayfield as a bum of a quarterback, right? Is what it is. Moving on. Russell Wilson as a rookie against Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning got blown out that game, right? Russell Wilson only threw the ball 21 times in that game. Russell Wilson wasn't a star as a rookie. He was a rookie leading a team full of stars, and they were all on the defensive side of the ball. How about 2013? It was the battle of two bad quarterbacks. It was Joe Flacco against Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick, because of reasons outside of football, has been built for people to be convinced that he was this elite quarterback and that, he was great. Colin Kaepernick was not an elite quarterback. Colin Kaepernick was a very average quarterback. But my point is that he got him to a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco got the Ravens to a Super Bowl. Nick Foles got the Eagles to a Super Bowl. Jared Goff got the Rams to a Super Bowl. Like, it is insane. Eli Manning got to Super Bowls. Rookie quarterback Russell Wilson got to a Super Bowl. Like, it is what it is. At the end of the day, this is a situation where you can get to the Super Bowl with average quarterback play. You don't need an elite quarterback to be an elite team. Look at the last 10 years. Look at those quarterbacks that have gotten to the Super Bowl. Nick Foles, Jared Goff, Joe Flacco, Colin Kaepernick, Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are not names that anybody is striving to get. No one is saying, Baker's good, but what we really need is Joe Flacco. We need a quarterback that can get us to the Super Bowl. We need Joe Flacco. No one and their mother is ever saying we need Joe Flacco, period. Right? Like, you see what I mean? That's what I was using the comparison with Cincinnati for. Can it be done? Yes. Can you get to the college football playoff as a non-Power 5 school? Yes. But there's no blueprint to get there. I can have Jared Goff as my quarterback. I can have Colin Kaepernick or Joe Flacco or Nick Foles or Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield. The point is, I can have average quarterbacks. There's not really a blueprint to build around those quarterbacks to get to a Super Bowl. What you have to have is the defense and all the other pieces, and you realize, we don't need an elite quarterback to get to the Super Bowl. That's the difference. But so many teams would rather continue trading assets, continue losing because they want that next Aaron Rodgers, instead of realizing that, hey, if we just have a really, really good defense, a very, very good run game, we can accomplish what we need to with average quarterback play. But the Aaron Rodgerses of the world have killed the National Football League because every team is looking for that next Aaron Rodgers. And if they're not Aaron Rodgers, we're moving on from them. The 49ers had no business drafting Trey Lance and trying to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. To me, if anything, the teams that have good enough quarterback, like Andy Dalton was a quarterback, not now. I don't want Andy Dalton now, but the Andy Dalton that the Bengals had, I know that the Bengals never won a playoff game with them. But at the end of the day, like, that was the perfect situation for the Bengals to be in. You had a quarterback that didn't cost you a whole hell of a lot of money. You were able to take that money and put it all on the defense. You were able to provide weapons and have a good, solid run game, have weapons on the outside in the pass game, all your talents on the defensive side of the ball. I would rather have an Andy Dalton-led superstar defensive team like the Bengals were for those 5 straight playoffs. I would rather have that than a Joe Burrow-led team with not a whole lot of talent around him once he gets paid. Like, that's not a shot at Burrow, but when Burrow gets paid, because he's going to continue ascending to be that superstar quarterback, right? When Burrow gets paid, you're not going to be able to provide him with weapons. And when he doesn't have weapons, now he's just a good quarterback on an average to bad team, missing the playoffs every year. Russell Wilson. Would you rather be a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, who has a chance to get to the playoffs and Super Bowl every year? Because he's not paid a ton. Well, that's a bad example. He's paid a ton. He was overpaid, but you see my point. I would rather have an Andy Dalton type quarterback that gets an average amount of money, that gives me way more money to spend on other assets. So now I'm a really, really good team with a good, solid quarterback, as opposed to being a team like the Seahawks who have an elite quarterback and a really average to below average to bad team. That's kind of how I view it. All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 518-1410. I'll take your calls on the other side. Plus, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. We'll get back to this on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Listen, stream, watch. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
This afternoon will be partly cloudy, a high near 40. Tonight will also be partly cloudy, a low near 24. And tomorrow will be partly cloudy, a high near 50. I'm Pete Spivak for 1410 ESPN Radio.
Staying healthy isn't easy, especially during the holidays. Watching your diet, staying active, managing stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The Sleep Number 360 smart bed senses your movements and effortlessly adjusts to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Bring proven quality sleep home for the holidays. It's our holiday savings event. Save up to $500 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds, only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
KTH Parts Industries in St. Paris, Ohio has immediate openings for second and third shift production associates. KTH promotes from within, offers medical, dental, 401k, attendance bonus, and a competitive wage, starting at just over $19 per hour with annual increases. KTH will be hosting walk-in interviews Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. through 3 p.m. Please bring a resume and photo ID. Visit kth.net for more information. KTH is an equal opportunity employer.
You have empty office space to fill or home office to create. You know what you need. You know what you'd like. But you also have a pretty good idea after you've shopped around the usual places what you need and what you like might not happen. Well, then you haven't been to Charles Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. Nobody has their selection. Nobody has their discounts. And every week there's something new. If you need office furniture, Larrick's Warehouse Outlet can sell it to you for half the price and below manufacturer's selected prices. Half price and below on hundreds of items. Selection from budget to the best. Really, desks from $50 to $5,000. Filing cabinets from $25 to $500. Before you go anywhere else, do yourself a favor and come to Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. With 25,000 square feet of selection, you're not going to go anywhere else. Larrick's Warehouse Outlet at 23 McOil Avenue, Dayton. Open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Larrick's, continuing the tradition.
Call It Propane has been serving the Buckeye Nation in the Miami Valley for over 65 years.
Let our family help protect your family from old man winter. Find out why 98% of our customers would recommend us to friends and family. Ask about the service options at 937-372-9194.
Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Call It Propane and Call It Seal Coating are proud to serve the Buckeye Nation.
I love my family. They're funny, sweet, smart, they even smell nice. But I hate holiday shopping for them. But ho, 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 not anymore. Because I discovered the perfect holiday gift for my entire family. Skechers. Skechers have affordable, comfortable shoes that will make checking off your gift list easy as pumpkin pie. The kids go crazy for them. They have shoes that light up and sparkle, shoes that slip on and off, shoes that look cool. Forget about toys this year. Skechers are just as fun and no assembly required. And they're not just for kids. Adults love them too. They've got cozy slippers, comfy winter boots, sneakers for walking, running, outdoors, exercise, and all sorts of work footwear. Or if you're lucky enough to play golf, yep, Skechers has those too. And they all have the exclusive fits and features your family will love. They've got relax fit, wide fit, stretch fit, arch fit, and even max cushioning that feels like you're walking on clouds. Plus, they come with Skechers exclusive air-cooled memory foam for ultimate comfort. And they're machine washable. So this year, give Skechers to everyone. Find them at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Hello, it's John Kozik, founder and president of TurboTrack Realty, and I buy houses as is, fast for cash. Call me today for an all-cash offer on any of your properties, and we can close within days at 614-470-2000, 614-470-2000. Do you own a property that's outdated and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, I'll buy it. Give us a call today for an all-cash offer at 614-470-2000, 614-470-2000. Would it be convenient for you if you could simply take what you wanted and leave the rest behind? Great, I'll buy it. I buy all types of real estate completely as is. I buy vacant properties, inherited homes, divorce situations, death in the family, apartment buildings, rental portfolios. I even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Call TurboTrack Realty today for an all-cash offer and speak with one of our friendly staff members at 614-470-2000, 614-470-2000.
Whether you're vaccinated or not, it's important to know the symptoms of COVID and its variants. Fever is the leading sign, and only the Exergen temporal scanner thermometer has been proven accurate with more than 100 clinical studies. Non-contact thermometers have no clinical evidence behind them and cannot be relied on. Be vigilant and seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Be accurate with Exergen. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Hello, Discover here to explain our cash back match. Here's how it works. We give you cash back for using your Discover card on the things you were going to buy anyway. Then we match that cash back in your first year. And that's why we call it Cashback Match. Now to recap and say cashback one more time. We match all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year automatically. Discover. Exceptionally common sense. Learn more at discover.com/match. Limitations apply.
Audible is best-selling audiobooks, exclusive originals, and podcasts all in one app. This holiday season, treat yourself with 60% off your first 3 months. Just visit audible.com for more details.
The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Presented by Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Break it down. The generation is just something fool. We just got tired of doing what we're supposed to do. Like a freak boy.
How about WWE getting involved with name, image, and likeness? In fact, I actually thought this was kind of strange at first, but it does make a lot of sense. Look, I love seeing how versatile this name, image, and likeness path has become, because it's not just your traditional ways. Like, I thought it was just going to be a lot of car commercials with athletes, right? Like, that's the low-hanging, easy fruit. We've seen that. But how about WWE signing 15 college athletes to name, image, and likeness deals, and they eye developmental pipeline? Okay, now WWE has never been shy of pursuing, pursuing college football, NFL players to be big stars in the WWE. In fact, some of WWE's biggest stars, in the past have played college football or played in the National Football League. I mean, names like, of course, Goldberg. Bill Goldberg, played for the Atlanta Falcons. Played in 14 games with one start, of course, for the Falcons. But, of course, he's one of WWE or professional wrestling's biggest stars. Roman Reigns. Played in college football, whatever, and he was a big star there. Wahoo McDaniel on this list. I don't know who the hell Wahoo McDaniel is, but like Lex Luger rings a bell. Ron Simmons, damn. Ron Simmons, remember Ron Simmons? Farouk. But nonetheless, he played college football and played some professional football as well. Ernie Ladd played football. Steve Mongo McMichael played. Brian Pillman, Moose. All right, Monty Brown. Pac-Man Jones. How about that? I mean, look, I found this interesting. Pac-Man Jones, of course, having a little mini run in the wrestling ring, right? Actually, I think he sometimes thought the football field and just random restaurants were his wrestling ring, but that kind of got him in trouble at times. But WWE, they have signed 15 college athletes, including some with substantial social media followings, to name, image, and likeness contracts, the pro wrestling promotion announced earlier this afternoon. Now, it goes on to say that the hope for WWE is to use the NCAA's new name, image, and likeness rules as a way to kind of form a pipeline to its developmental system. As I mentioned, you have your Roman Reigns, former college football player. You talked about Bill Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, The Rock. All of these guys had, a lot of experience on the football field, and that's kind of where they, kind of became as physical as they were to pursue this career. But I love this. I love what WWE is doing here, and it's kind of a good crossover into our everyday sports talk with the name, image, and likeness. But to kind of carve out what they call a pipeline to its developmental system, the statement that was released said that each deal provides a clear pathway from collegiate athletics to the WWE. The group of athletes come from 4 different sports: wrestling, football, track and field, and basketball. WWE's program is called Next in Line. Really neat. It says, in addition to financial compensation, the signees will also get special access to the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, which is complete with resources in brand building, media training, communications, live event promotion, creative writing, and community relations. And that was also in the release. It says, in exchange, the athletes will endorse WWE on social media and elsewhere. So I think it's pretty neat. It does go on to say that upon completion of the NIL program, select athletes may earn an exclusive opportunity to be offered a WWE contract. So every year, new athletes will be added to this program, and every year WWE will look to form relationships with these athletes and potentially kind of gauge their interest a bit for them to pursue a professional wrestling career. As I've said, some of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling have started out at the football ranks and have moved up to be some of the biggest stars. But there is a Buckeye on this list. I found this pretty interesting. Some of the athletes that were signed: Ohio State track and field athlete Carlos Aviles, Duke women's basketball player Lexi Gordon, Wake Forest women's track and field athlete Aaliyah Hutchins, Portland State football player John Cron, LSU football player Glenn Logan, Alabama track and field athlete Isaac, I can't even pronounce his last name. I'm not trying to be rude, but I did find this very interesting. I think it's neat, and we'll keep an eye on it. But like I said, I love how versatile the name, image, and likeness has become with how creative some of these companies are getting. All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll close out the show on the other side. Bengals, Browns, it's a sprint to the finish line. And I'm telling you, that Week 17 matchup to close out the season, that could be a playoff game. The Browns and Bengals, that game in Week 17 will finally mean something. How many late season Browns-Bengals games have we had to kind of suffer through? Two teams out of the playoff conversation, no longer relevant. They're relevant right now as we sit here in mid-December. And that's going to set up one hell of a Week 17 matchup if things play out correctly over the next 5 games. We'll close out the show with that next.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash right here on ESPN 1410 Wing AM.
You may be into punk rock, soft rock, or classic rock, R&B, hip-hop, or house, country, techno, or techno-country. But no matter what kind of music you listen to, here's something else you should hear. Please consider getting vaccinated. Talk to your pharmacist today about Comirnaty, COVID-19 vaccine mRNA. This message brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
Germain Honda Beaver Creek is your local Honda dealer. For a limited time, get 0% financing on the 21 Passport, the 22 Pilot, and HRV, or 1.9% for 48 months on the 22 Odyssey. Lease a 22 HRV Sport for as little as $229 a month, or a CRV Hybrid EX for as little as $279 a month. See me, Sales Manager Jason High, for all the details. We are located on Route 35, just east of 675 between Xenia and Beaver Creek. Germain Honda Beaver Creek, the right car, the right price, the right way. I hope to see you soon.
Take home Frickers Holiday Feast. Frickin' yum, 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 yum. Our gift cards always please. Frickin' yum, 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 yum.
Take home 4 pounds of frickin' chicken chunks for only $29.99, carry out only. Buy a $25 Frickers gift card and you'll get 5 frickin' bonus bucks free. The ho, ho, ho for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Frickers.
Frickin' yum, yum.
Hey, here to tell you about my friends at Cordell Transportation. They're now hiring Class A CDL drivers and offering a $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Home daily, dedicated lanes, and no-touch freight. Brand new equipment as well. Medical, dental, vision, and company-paid life insurance. Call Cody right now. Apply online at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
This is CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger. Do you want to be a hero for the holidays? How about getting your loved one a new iPhone? That's right. Pure Talk has iPhone 12 starting at just $479 through the end of the year. And sure, they have 13s too. Switch to Pure Talk. Great nationwide 5G coverage. Yes, the same coverage as the big guys, but the average family saves over $800 a year. Now that's just smart. There's no need to overpay for Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Plus, with Pure Talk's 30-day risk-free guarantee, you've got nothing to lose. Unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data is just $30 a month. And like I said, the iPhone 12, just $479. From your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say Jill50, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Plus, save on a new phone. That's pound 250, say Jill50. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Some restrictions apply. See site for details.
The holidays are here, and eBay is offering their best deals of December for one day only as a last chance to save big on premium brands with exclusive deals. Get more when you get it on eBay.
All sports, all the time. This is 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here on a Wednesday. Kev Nash will be back to the show tomorrow. Browns-Bengals. Again, Browns coming out of a bye week, and right there, they desperately needed that bye week. And right now, as you kind of look at the race to the finish line, it is interesting. We're looking at what's ahead for the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns, and it's all going to come to head in that Week 17 matchup. The Browns and Bengals close out the season against one another, and you look at where the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals are right now. We'll start with the Browns. So the Browns are coming out of the bye week. They just lost that ugly game against the Baltimore Ravens, and it's really frustrating because that game was winnable. When you hold Baltimore to that little points and you force 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions by Lamar Jackson, you can't come away with the win. That's squandered opportunity. If the Browns miss the playoffs at the end of the year, it is because of injuries. Yes, it is because that the team that had Super Bowl expectations coming into the year, they had Super Bowl expectations coming into the year for a reason. It's because of that roster. Well, when that roster is not together out on the field, it's not the same team. And I get tired of people saying, well, that's just an excuse. No, that's a reason. And when people say that's just an excuse, that's a hater's way of trying to discredit the one thing that they know makes sense. And it's easier to be a troll. And that's what people are. Look, I'm not going to lie. The Bengals have been healthy as can be. The Bengals right now, unfortunately for them, they're starting to get bit by the injury bug. They're the ones who are starting to get hit by it. The Browns are coming out of it. The Bengals are going into it. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, again, if there's a silver lining for the Browns, and again, it's not like the Browns can't get hurt anymore moving forward. They most definitely can, but they're starting to get healthy to where the Bengals are starting to get a little bit more beat up. But coming out of the bye week, they got Baltimore this week. They're a 2.5-point favorite. It's in Cleveland. If Cleveland beats Baltimore this week, and I believe they do beat Baltimore, for one, this is a playoff game. If the Browns lose on Sunday, they're done. They're beating Baltimore. Baltimore's not playing good football. Lamar Jackson is not playing very well at all. 5 turnovers combined the last 2 weeks, which I thought was kind of a weird twist. 4 of those 5 turnovers came in one game. I believe every quarterback's allowed 1 turnover a game. Especially in today's NFL, when you throw the ball as often as you do, you're going to turn the ball over in today's NFL, but you got to limit how much you do it. All right. Baker Mayfield turned the ball over a lot in his first couple years in the NFL. Now he has to be managed differently to avoid those turnovers. They was dropping back on average 35 times a game his first 2 years in the NFL. They got that number under 30, stopped turning the ball over. When healthy, Baker's a very, very good quarterback. We saw Joe Burrow throw the football a ton, and he still throws a ton of interceptions. But we've seen when they limit how much he throws and they get him under that 30 attempt line, the Bengals are well above 500. In fact, they're 5-0 on the season when he throws the ball under 30 times. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that when Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow both throw the ball less than 30 times, that their teams are more successful, because the quarterbacks are not at the elite level yet to carry their teams. It's all about the run game and the defense. And the Bengals have a very good run game, have a very good defense when healthy. Same thing for the Browns. But when you try to force Joe Burrow to be Aaron Rodgers, when you try to force Baker Mayfield to be Patrick Mahomes, good things don't happen. The ball gets turned over a lot. And I get tired of people trying to make excuses and say, well, that was Jamar Chase's fault. He bobbled it and blah, blah, blah. Well, if I'm not allowed to talk about all the drops that Baker Mayfield has to deal with from his wide receivers and tight ends, you're not allowed to blame Burrow's mistakes on everyone else. You can't move the goalpost. But that's really the reality of the Browns and the Bengals down the stretch. This is going to be a roller coaster ride. There are going to be weeks where we feel like $1 million and then reality slaps us in the face. The Bengals came out of the bye week 2 big wins right out of the gate. You beat the Raiders in Vegas. Then you come home and you destroy Pittsburgh and you feel like nothing can go wrong. And then Joe Burrow had one of his worst games against the Chargers. All right. He looked horrible. There was a big there was a big storyline there of Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow. Those are 2 of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. There's always the debate of which one's better. I think it was obvious who was better, not just in that game, but overall. Justin Herbert's been the much better quarterback, the more consistent quarterback since coming in. And he's faced a lot of the same issues as Joe Burrow. He didn't have a great offensive line. It's an improved offensive line this year. But outside of Keenan Allen, it's not as if he has as many weapons as Joe Burrow, who has Jamar Chase, who has T. Higgins, who has Tyler Boyd, who has Joe Mixon. All right. Joe Burrow's struggles are on him. He has a ton of talent. I'm getting tired of people saying, oh, he's a second-year quarterback. I don't give a rip. He has more as a second-year quarterback than what Russell Wilson has 100 years into his career. So I don't want to, no, it doesn't work that way. But you look at what's coming up for the Browns. Baltimore this week. They beat Baltimore and they beat the Raiders coming up back-to-back weeks. They have both of those games at home. They will lose to the Green Bay Packers on the road on December 25th. Merry Christmas. All right. So at that point, when the Browns lose to the Packers on Christmas Day, they will be 8-7. They will then head to Pittsburgh. They'll win. They'll beat Pittsburgh. They'll be 9-7. And then they will beat the Cincinnati Bengals to finish the season at 10-7. Where will the Bengals be heading into that matchup? If you take a look, okay, the Cincinnati Bengals at this point, coming out of that, limping out of that charge, they're not beating the Niners, by the way. The offensive line it's garbage. It's been getting worse as the season has gone on. And compound that with the fact that Jamar Chase has become really a non-factor from a catch standpoint. The reason that T. Higgins, and Kevin and I talked about this yesterday, the reason that T. Higgins has become such a force within this offense is because of Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase's production has definitely dwindled down. I mean, his last big game, he's had 2 touchdowns in the last month. This is a guy that was literally just living in the end zone for the first 2 months of the season. He's had 2 touchdowns in the last month. He has not been a huge factor from a production box score standpoint, but the reason that T. Higgins has been so dominant is because of Jamar Chase with all the attention that he garners. All right. So that's the thing. Like T. Higgins is benefiting from that. The way Jarvis benefited from OBJ on the field. OBJ couldn't catch a damn football. OBJ was not productive at all. But because he was still a threat and the defense had to give him that attention, it opened up the field for Jarvis Landry. There's a reason Jarvis hasn't looked as crisp, since OBJ's departure. There was some good that OBJ brought to the table, but not enough to get paid the amount of money he was getting paid. And then the Bengals go on the road at Denver. So here's what I have coming up for them. I have them they lost to the chart. They're losing to San Francisco. They're 7-6 right now. Or they will be 7-6 when they lose to San Francisco. I do have them beating Denver to improve to 8-6. And to be honest, that's a toss-up game too, because Denver's defense and Cincinnati's O-line and, Joe Burrow not playing very good football right now, that's a toss-up, but I'm going to give it to the Bengals on the road at Denver. And then it's a gauntlet to close it out. They're going to be, in my opinion, coming back home on December 26th. They'll be at home against Baltimore. They'll be 8-7. They're going to lose against Baltimore and drop to 8-7. They're going to lose at home against Kansas City and be 8-8. And then they're going to be 8-9 when they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. Unfortunately, Bengals fans, I think you've seen the last of the fun Bengals team. I think you're going to see a lot of what you saw this past Sunday against the Chargers, unfortunately. Very tough schedule down the stretch. Your young quarterback's not playing his best football. The defense is your strength, but they're getting banged up now. I'm not saying you can't expect him to play well, but hopefully Trey Wayne's coming back is going to be, play a big role. Awuzi's getting healthy, but that's going to be big right there. But linebacker play still a concern. Pass rush needs to get a little better as well, but they did play really well in the second half against the Chargers. We'll see what ends up happening as far as that's concerned. The Cleveland Browns, like I said, Baltimore, they win. They beat the Raiders. They lose to Green Bay. They beat Pittsburgh and beat Cincinnati because, they own Cincinnati. That's not trolling. That's just the reality of it. Joe Burrow or Baker Mayfield is 6-1 all time against the Cincinnati Bengals. He owns them. Call him dad, Bengals fans, because he owns you. And Joe Burrow's never beat the Browns. 0-3 against Baker Mayfield. How about that? Never beat Baker Mayfield. Unreal. All right, that wraps it up for us here this afternoon. Could be Facebook comments here to close out. Doug Toby says Peyton Manning averaged 15 interceptions per year, 26 his first year. Just saying, Burrow's numbers very similar. I'm going to stop you right there, Doug. You sound as delusional as the Utah football fans. You're not going to sit there and put Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow in the same conversation. Peyton Manning had garbage teammates when he got into the NFL. Garbage. I mean, the Colts won 3 games. The Colts were not good. The Colts won 3 games with Peyton Manning. The Bengals won 4 games last year without Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, of course, was a very good rookie, but Peyton Manning had nothing. The Bengals have weapons. They had T. Higgins last year. Okay, they had Tyler Boyd last year. They had Joe Mixon last year. You had good pieces on the defense. Just because they didn't produce doesn't mean you don't have talent. That just means the team wasn't very good. No. Joe Burrow has cost his team games. That's the thing, too. If you look at the standings right now for the Cincinnati Bengals as far as where they are at, I mean, the Bengals should be the best team in the NFL right now. And I'm being dead serious. I'm not trolling here. They are sitting at 7-5. If you look at how everything's shaken out, I mean, the Patriots are 9-4. The Bengals should be 10-2, or at least 9-3 up there with the Patriots. Because when you look at what happened, the interception in overtime against the Packers cost the Bengals a game there. If they win that game, I mean, we're talking about a team right now as we currently sit here. They're 7-5 right now. That's a 8-4 record. All right, they beat the Jets like they're supposed to if he doesn't throw that interception in the fourth quarter with the chance to take the lead. Now we're talking about a team that is 9-4 or 9-3 at this point. All right, and then you had the chance to cut it to within one possession against the Chargers, and you couldn't get it done there. You threw the interception. So, no, Joe Burrow is losing his team games. When your defense is playing as well as they are, when your run game is as good as it is, and you're throwing interceptions in fourth quarters and late game situations, that's on Joe Burrow. It's not his legacy. Year 2. But just because it's year 2 doesn't mean every time something bad happens, it's because, he's young. But then when he does something great, it's, oh, my God, let's throw a parade. The Browns and Bengals are very similar. They're very equally matched, and it's going to be a fun race to the finish line. I cannot wait for Week 17. I cannot wait for that matchup between the Browns and Bengals, which will in essence be a playoff game, and I cannot wait. Kevin Nash comes back tomorrow. We'll have Mike Golick and more coming up later on this week as well. We'll hear from Keith Byers after being inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. All of that, a lot of stuff still coming this week, plus Talking Out Loud with Sully tomorrow night. The Dayton Flyers on the road at SMU tonight, 8 o'clock, the tip-off. Excited for that. The Flyers' true road game tonight. They will be tested, and we're going to continue watching this young team grow. Until tomorrow, it's been the Justin Kinder Show on 1410 ESPN Radio.
The Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Brad Mays with Home Experts Realty. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio. You're listening to Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM.
Hey, Chrissy, it's Leo. We're going to need some backup on Friday night, okay?
Leo's Limos needs to say I do to 4 commercial drivers.
You book